Gentlemen, what made you nope out before the second date? We went to her place and her pets and plants were all dead. I saw goldfish floating upside down in a fish tank, and she had a dead hamster in a cage on her dining room table. She said, "Yeah, that happens a lot." And all I'm imagining is hamster after hamster starving to death right in front of her. The word sociopath floated into my mind. I made some excuses to leave, and she went a bit nuts at that point, which concerned me quite a bit, but at least I'd already figured her head was seriously spun. She rolled her eyes when I said she looked nice, she'd clearly put in a lot of effort, criticized where I chose to eat, complained about the music we went to see. I spent the whole date anxious, assuming that she was hating every moment, because, she didn't have anything positive to say about anything. And then she said, "I had a good time, let's do this again." Nah, I'm good. I've got enough negativity and mixed signals coming from my own brain. I don't need it coming from the outside too. Oh god, she's a complainer, just like my mom. She always manages to find something to complain about even when the situation gets better. I try not to be like her on dates. It seems that when people are constantly complaining, they literally have nothing to contribute. I went on a date with a lady I met online. She talked about 3 things on this date and little else: her pets, her ex, and the last time she had gastroenteritis. There was no second date. Went to dinner, she was on her phone the entire time texting, even when we were talking. Figured she was just in it for the free dinner, 'cause really, what's the point of agreeing to a date if you're not going to try to get to know the person? That's when you put down cash for your half of the bill and walk out. Frick that. What that person has just suggested is a real power move. I'm not sure that I could ever work up the nerve to do it myself, but honestly, people who behave like that date probably deserve it. What complaints can they make? Having to pay for their own share? There's maybe some nuance to it. I mean, like if your date seems nice but you're just not interested or feeling the connection, then maybe pay for the bill. If they are behaving like an absolute jerk, pay your part and bail. So, I'm not proud of this one, but I'll share. Years ago, when I was still single, I met someone online. We chatted for a bit and she seemed cool enough, and we decided to meet up for a burger at a place I knew downtown. Seemed like a kind of low-key thing. I got into the bar a few minutes early and ordered a beer, then finished it. Then, 45 minutes late, she rolls in. First, okay, cool, we have jobs and we deal with traffic or whatever, but no excuse, just a shrug and, "That's how it goes sometimes." She sat down and we began chit-chatting. She asked about my work. I assumed it was a regular nervous bit of small talk. 2, but no, it was trying to feel out how much money I made. And 3, when she asked my job title and I told her, she immediately suggested that we leave this casual pub place to hit up a wine bar down the block. Okay, I guess. It's a little more upscale than I had in mind, but okay. We walk there, get seated, and then come the menus. 4, she ordered herself dinner. Some kind of seafood thing that cost an insane amount of money. And a bottle of wine. Not a glass, mind you. A $250 fricking bottle of wine. I'd already ordered a drink from the bar for myself, and I got the impression that this was not wine to share. She kept talking about how much her job sucked and how little it paid, and how no one at her work was fun to hang out with. Like the only conversation she had was bashing work and co-workers, with a few mildly racist undertones. 6. The whole time she was texting friends to meet up that evening. I was invited, of course, to party with them all night, and I assume to bankroll their fun. I discreetly went up to the bar, paid for my drink, and just left. I straight up noped out of there without so much as a goodbye. From my messages when I checked in online later, I know that I stuck her with an almost $500 bill and that she was going to sue me for it. Heard from the wine bar owner later, it was close to work and sometimes a happy hour spot for me, that she'd apparently tried to skip out on the bill, but they stopped her and she paid. By the way, my very next date was with the woman I eventually married. That one went much, much better. She had a 1-year-old and told me about a recent nasty divorce. No problem until she told me that the divorce was due to the baby not being his. I drove her home because she didn't have a car at the time and she asked we stop for an errand. To pick up matching t-shirts she had designed for her and her ex. She said, "I can't wait for you to meet my older brother. He just got out of jail for selling smack." I said, "Didn't you just tell me that your younger brother was addicted to smack?" "Oh yeah, I wondered how that happened." Frick this crap, I'm out. When we saw Fury in theaters, she read the subtitles out loud. I'm not sure if she thought I couldn't read them or if she needed to sound them out, but I knew at that moment no follow-up was necessary. I arrived at her place and she told me to hop in her car as she just needed to drop something off at a friend's house real quick. It wasn't a friend. It was someone she had an appointment to sell those hot oil infusers and their millions of scented inserts to. I sat in a stranger's home for 90 minutes while they smelled them all. She wanted to go to dinner afterwards, and I asked her to please drop me off at the car so I could go home. She didn't think this was cool of me as she had a business to run. I guess I didn't even make it a whole first date. I went for a meal with this girl I met through a dating app, and it was going really well. We started talking about movies and then we decided to go to the cinema to watch Inception. She said there was a cinema nearby, but I didn't know the area at all, so I used the GPS on my phone and she held it and directed me. Once we got there, we started walking inside and I realized I didn't have my phone in my pocket. I said I must have left it in the car and started to walk back to get it. She was trying to get me to leave it and saying we'd missed the film, but the phone was only about a week old, so I was really paranoid about it. We checked the car for about 10 minutes, but we couldn't find it. I asked her to check her jacket and bag, but she said it wasn't there. A couple parked next to us, so I asked them to ring my number because I couldn't find it. It started to ring, and it was obviously coming from my date's handbag. She took it out and said she must have missed it. I thanked the couple and locked my car, and as I turned back around, she was walking the other way. I ran to catch up and asked what was going on, but she was very dismissive and was barely talking. That's when I realized it probably wasn't an accident and just left her to walk home alone. She forgot to take off her wedding ring at the second date. She asked if I had any love interests still in existence. When I said no, she said she didn't believe me. She told me she wanted to travel the world and see old friends, who all seemed to be guys, and thought that I, as a lawyer, should work and pay for her travels. She was insane. She also offered to do the deed in her car in the first 5 minutes of meeting. No second date for you. When she said, "I'm so glad my fiancé is still deployed," I noped out and left her with the bill for that dinner. You know, say what you will about these people, at least they're open about what they're doing. Maybe they're making sure at least these men they're meeting are aware? I don't know whether that's honorable, but it's sure preferable to leading 6 months of a delusioned but happy relationship and then getting absolutely mauled by an angry Navy SEAL coming off their tour. So, thank you, honest cheaters. Teeth as black as the night. She didn't have any diseases or syndromes, but simply no time to brush her teeth. For the record, her photos didn't show her teeth. If I ask you a question or try to talk, please reciprocate. I hate that I feel like I'm supposed to use up an arsenal of questions that will only get a brief response in return. I met her at a hospital. I was an ER patient for a hand wound and she was a phlebotomist. I asked her out to a movie and then dinner. We had a really excellent talk about comics and movies. We were getting to know each other and flirting. It was clearly a date. At the end, when I told her I'd like to do it again, she said her fiancé probably wouldn't be cool with it a second time. Here's a text conversation we had the day after the second time we went out. First time we hit a couple of bars, so we were drinking, which probably made it more bearable. Decided to give her a second shot with a beach date, but it sucked. Pretty much, she was just very negative and argumentative about almost anything I said. So I said, "Hey, thanks for driving yesterday. Anyway, I don't just want to ghost anyone because that's pretty mean, but I don't think we really click. Good luck with your move." She was moving apartments that week. Shoot. I should have guessed this was coming after how off yesterday felt. I appreciate your honesty. I know I poked you too much with the fishing comments, but were there other things I did that were really off-putting? I'd like to know so I don't keep doing them. I responded 2 days later because I was actually really freaking busy. "Sorry dude, work has been crazy busy this week, so I haven't really been on my phone. Mainly, I think we have different values and worldviews, and our differing personalities didn't allow us to get past those or discuss. Kinda seemed like a lot of the things I brought up led to negative responses, which makes it harder for self-disclosure and leaves the conversation at small talk and prevents any kind of connection. Don't take this as an attack, because I think at the root of it all, we just have different clashing personalities and never really found any common ground. Maybe I'm just being sensitive, but I did feel like there wasn't much willingness to understand my interests or values and a lack of agreeableness from you. So it felt as if I was being almost disparaged for my values and worldview. I like fishing and hunting, and she was a high-horsed vegan type. Okay, thank you for the thoughtful feedback. You're right that we have different worldviews, but I was close-minded in my approach to getting to know you and making you feel welcome. I definitely came off judgmental and bitter on Sunday, and I appreciate you explaining how that made you close off. Thanks again for taking the time to explain and for giving me a shot in the first place. Wow, that was so mature. You don't see that often enough. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I met a girl from my university for dinner one time, and she started the date off by saying she only ate with her hands and didn't use utensils because she's a super taster and can taste the metals they're made of. This wouldn't have been a problem if we were eating finger foods, of course, but it was a problem as I watched her eat a salmon fillet and wild rice like fricking Gollum. And to head off some comments I'm getting, she's not Filipina or of Asian descent. According to her Facebook, she's German/Italian, and I know those people use forks. The girl I met claimed that she was seeing other guys just to use them for free drinks, their pool, or their car was nice. I noped out of there real quick. 6 years ago, I went out with a girl who called me a racist because I don't like sushi. She chewed gum through our initial date, which was at a decent Italian place, including a bottle of good white wine. And she proceeded to tell me how she had married early, had 2 kids, girls, realized she was a lesbian, left her husband and took most of his money, lived with girlfriend number 1, left girlfriend number 1 for number 2, ended that, and then realized that long-term she needed an eggplant. I noped the frick out of there so fast. She never asked a single question about me. So frustrating. First, suggested we go to the nicest steakhouse in town. Then, when I assumed we'd go Dutch or pay for our own stuff, she assumed I was paying because she's, quote, just old-fashioned. Then asked me what my debt-to-income ratio was, and finally, upon learning I'd paid off my student loans, demanded that I pay hers off if I wanted a second date. I drove us to the venue, but I just drove home by myself after paying the bill. Go fudge yourself, Erin, you cheap witch. You see, gentlemen, one of the wonderful things about feminism is that we don't have to submit to the traditional mindset about dates, and while some of us do offer to pay for our dates, we're not legally obliged. The world of more equal dating with empowered, independent women has many perks, despite what certain people say. Enjoy it. First and only date with a girl I barely knew through some friends. I drove to her house, she got in my car, and smelled like she'd just dropped a massive turd but forgot to wipe. Went to dinner, I barely ate. Made an excuse to end early, dropped her off, and drove home with the windows down in the middle of winter. Pregnant, but no worries, the father is locked up. I was 32, she was 35. She showed up to dinner high as a kite. Dropped the C word several times, loud enough for people around us to hear. She then got loaded during dinner, ordered an expensive plate and barely touched it. She also told me I'm stupid for still buying books and childish for listening to music. She also insisted I had to take her out 2 to 3 times a week minimum. It was also implied she'd be moving in with me in the near future. She was unemployed and living at home, which honestly didn't bother me. The whole jumping into the deep end thing did. 20 minutes into the date, I text my friend, "Holy crap, turns out she's awful." She didn't say anything. Like, there's being nervous and then there's that. We were taking a film class together in school and agreed to go see a movie together, paying 50-50, that counted for extra credit. It became clear a few days beforehand that this was turning into a full-on date, and I just rolled with it. We were both single and I thought we could have a fun night out together. I asked if we could get dinner after the movie to talk about it and get to know each other better. She seemed excited by the idea, and I was looking forward to the night. I picked her up and she was dead silent. She was dressed to the nines for a casual date and was clearly nervous. I did my best to break the ice and run the conversation, and the best I could get out of her was a nervous chuckle and, "Yep." After the movie, I asked if she still wanted dinner, and she said absolutely, and then proceeded to watch me eat dinner while she stared at me. When I dropped her off at home, she told me she had a really nice time and hoped we could hang out outside of class again. I told her for sure, and we said goodnight. She flat out never said another word to me in class again. A year or so later, I ran into her at a party and asked her what the whole deal was about. She confessed she was so gosh darn anxious that she had no clue what to do or say. Apparently that was the first date she'd ever been on with a guy. It's a shame too, because in class we got along really well. I was just so put off by the silence that I didn't know how to approach her for the rest of the semester. Apparently she's a semi-professional golfer now. I haven't heard from her in years, but I hope she's doing well out there. She chewed her food with her mouth open. Always kills me. Went for a walk in the woods. She walked about 5 feet ahead of me the whole time. Would think she was nervous about walking alone in the woods with a guy she didn't know, but she's the one that suggested a walk. I don't know. It was weird. She didn't even bring her wallet to the restaurant. I would have offered and obviously ended up paying, but that level of presumptuousness was an immediate turn-off. She showed up in a dirty white dress. Her hair looked like it hadn't been brushed in months. During dinner, she told me that she still lived at home, never wanted to get a job, and that she stole her dad's car while he was asleep to meet me at the restaurant. Then when she found out I was divorced, she said, "You didn't work hard enough to save your marriage." That hurt. She had no idea what I'd been through. I put down the chopsticks, went and paid, and said nice meeting you, and left. She said, "So you're a mathematician. Is it true all mathematicians are virgins?" Statistically, no. Also, goodbye. We went out for coffee. She bought a bottle of vodka and kept topping up her cup. I politely asked her what the deal was, and she said she liked to party. When it was time to go, she fell over and started screaming that I had to help her up. I did. I told her to wait right there and left. She didn't even fricking share the vodka. Well, you should have at least called a taxi. I'm going to say that I don't completely agree with your actions. Nonetheless, funny story, smooth exit, thank you for sharing. She was part of a multi-level marketing scheme like Beachbody or something. The list goes on, but that was the big no-no for me. Went out with a nice girl with similar interests, but the entire time I kept looking at her teeth and cursing my sensitive nose because I could smell her rank breath when she talked and really couldn't focus on anything else. Tinder date. She, quote, forgot to mention that she had a boyfriend. I became suspicious when I saw the background of her phone. It was a picture of her kissing with a man. When I asked her about that picture, she told me it was her boyfriend. The reason she was doing this was because her boyfriend was boring. She couldn't answer when I asked her why she didn't break up with him in the first place. Told her what she was doing wasn't cool and that she needs to be honest to her boyfriend, and I ended the date shortly after. So I take this girl out to a bar and restaurant, meeting her for the first time after talking on an online dating site. After she orders her food, she drops the bomb. She tells me for the past 7 years she's been a word that we can't say on YouTube, so let's just say it's the kind of dungeon master that has nothing to do with tabletop role-playing games. So I'm an open-minded guy. I'm cool with this. She probably has some funny stories, right? Well, she starts telling me these stories, and for the first half hour or so, they are pretty entertaining. Eventually, though, I want to talk about other things. However, anytime I try to change the subject, she immediately brings it back to dudes she's gone number 2 on. It got weird. I could barely get a word in. She basically didn't take a breath for 3 hours. Again, I'm a really open-minded guy, but there's only so many consecutive stories of gags and double-sided butt toy use a person can take before even the most open-minded amongst us starts to feel uncomfortable. At one point, I excuse myself to go to the bathroom. As I stand up and turn around, she seizes this chance to smack my butt and says, "Your butt looks like a baby pumpkin. I could bounce a quarter off it and get back 2 dimes and a nickel." Keep in mind, this lady is a professional. It was crisp and painful. To put this in perspective, I was wearing thick black jeans. She hit me in the back pocket, so a double layer of denim, and when I checked myself for the damage in the bathroom, it was a clear, fat red handprint on my butt cheek. Like I could see the lines in her hand. I could have mooned a psychic and they would have been able to predict her future. So I'm about done with this. We finish the meal and I drive her home while she still blabs tales of donkey tail butt toys and things I've never heard of, going into places I wish I hadn't heard of. So I pull into her driveway, and the second the car goes into park, she immediately grabs my family jewels, like specifically targets them. And it wasn't hot, it was a hostage situation where she had all the power. Then she straight up licks the side of my face, chin to hairline, her tongue as big as a Shetland pony. I do not want. Then she looks me in the eyes and says menacingly, "I'm gonna strap you into my dungeon." The frick you are? I choose life! I think to myself. How do I get out of this? She literally has me by the stones here. So here's what I come up with. I tell her, hell yeah, let's do it. I have a special toy I keep in my trunk. Is that okay? She says, sure, bring any toys you want. So I tell her to meet me at her doorstep while I bust it out because I want it to be a surprise. As she steps out of the car, she gives me a look that she thinks is hot, but is actually terrifying. The second her feet touch the ground, I slam the car into reverse and fly out of her driveway as fast as my car can go. You know how most people pull out of a driveway, switch to drive, and then drive off ahead? I didn't do that. I didn't want 1 second of switching gears to give her the chance to catch me. I pulled out of the driveway and just kept going down the street in reverse for about 5 blocks. The passenger door was flapping around, still open, because I took off before she shut it. When I'm satisfied that she won't catch me, I close the door, put it in drive, and go home. Gotta get back on that horse, right? Wrong. I got home, iced my sack, and deleted my online profile. Not today, Satan.
What was the cringiest thing you did in your first relationship? High school girlfriend and I used to make out on her bed with the door locked while her parents were out there, under the impression that we were studying. Heavy kissing, and at some point she says, "Cut that out, your breath stinks." I started kissing her neck and she slowly wrapped her legs around my thigh. A couple of minutes later, starts breathing heavily. Couple of minutes after that, her legs tighten around my thigh, and a couple of minutes after that, she suddenly goes rigid, eyes roll up until I see whites, rapid breathing, exhaling heavily. I panic. And this is my moronic thought process, since all the blood's left my brain. She's choking. I should give her CPR, but she said no kissing her mouth. So I close my lips around her nose and blow like a trumpet. She starts coughing immediately, but she's too polite to cuss me out, says she needs a drink of water and leaves the room. We continued to go out for about 6 years after that. In conclusion, didn't realize girlfriend was having a great time, thought she was dying, tried to save her by blowing sewer breath straight into her nose. I'm an idiot. I lost my virginity to my first girlfriend. I was about 16 at the time and was invited to stay the night because her dad was on a business trip. I was excited because we'd talked a bunch about doing it, and I was finally ready to lose my virginity. I get to her house and we're straight to action. She pulls down my pants, and my eggplant is as limp as a top ramen noodle. She did mouth stuff for about 30 minutes until I could at least get half a chub. I got on top and started ramming away. I didn't really know what to do with my hands, and at the time I know that people pull hair while doing the deed. So I crap you not, I stare down at her and take my 2 hands full of her hair on both sides and just pull in a downward thrust while I'm ramming away. Sometimes I think of this moment and want to disappear. I almost completely erased this memory. So I was young and I had my first boyfriend. We were experimenting in the bedroom, and I really wanted him to think my hoo-ha tasted nice, so I would literally rub strawberry fricking flavored lip gloss into my vajayjay. There's no way he didn't know. I thought it was such a genius idea that I had to share it with my fellow women. So I wrote it down and passed a note in class to one of my friends. It dropped on the floor and all the boys read it and started screaming laughing. Strawberry Lips was my new name, and I cried for a week. This was with a girl I dated in high school. My dad was getting drunk at a block party, so I got the idea to take a ski boat and go for a romantic boat ride. So we park in the middle of the lake and start making out and stuff. We notice our feet getting wet. The boat was sinking, so I start freaking out, bailing water out with cups, sopping it up with my t-shirt, and wringing it out of the boat. You know, just freaking panicking. Right before I accept the fate of my dad's $12,000 inboard motor ski boat and calm down, I remember that I didn't put back the drain plug before dropping it in the water, so I replaced it and drove back. I think aiming for getting laid and nearly sinking your dad's boat is a pretty unsurpassed level of financial disaster on a first date, although I'm sure we'll see many cases of emotional and reputational destruction as we proceed through the topic. Started dating 3 months before sophomore year ended. Once summer started, I completely ghosted her. Skipped to the first week of junior year, and I thought we were still together. You can imagine how she reacted when I approached her for a kiss. The shame is still real to this day. Told my first real girlfriend that I'm glad she wasn't the most beautiful girl in the world, so I didn't have to worry about every guy trying to steal her. The letters I've written. Oh, those letters. 15-year-old me thought he was deep and romantic. He wasn't. I hope they don't exist anymore. She started to ignore me at school. This was like maybe 1 or 2 weeks after we started dating. I called her house like 6 or 7 times one afternoon after school until her mum picked up, who was basically furious because I'd been hanging on the line. I explained to her that Alexa was ignoring my calls, and I hear in the background, "Alexa, why aren't you answering the phone?" To which she replies, "Because he's weird and he just keeps calling." I hung up the phone and went to my room. I carved her name in my wall with a pen. I still cringe about it to this day. I was walking her home, anticipating kissing her for the first time at her doorstep, and I kept licking my lips because I didn't want to kiss her with a dry mouth. Halfway to her house, she looks at me and says, "Stop doing that." I realized I probably looked really creepy. Broke up with her because my best friend told me to. We were perfectly fine together, but I guess I kinda worshipped the guy and his advice. He later tried asking her out when we split. We were all 14 to 15. Ugh, I'd honestly forgotten this memory until I saw the topic. My first date to a movie, we saw Titanic because that can only end well. We, as horny youngsters, aren't watching the movie, but instead making out and moaning in probably the third row of a packed theater. I'd never made out before, I assumed moaning was involved. So cringy and so gross. My first kiss in the movies was at The Bounty Hunter. It was interesting because I also got my first BJ a few minutes later in the same spot. I remember 4 things. 1. My parents and her parents were 2 rows in front of us. 2. The looks of disgust on the old couple's face 4 seats down. 3. She swallowed and it was way too much sensation for 16-year-old me. 4. Gerard Butler was in it. Declined staying the night because I was, and I quote, "wearing a skirt and I didn't want it to ride up while I was sleeping." I licked her face to be random. God, that hurt to reimagine. Please don't mention hybridized eating utensils. He took me to Olive Garden and bought me that meat lover's lasagna. I'm pretty sure that's what it was called, and when we got back to his place, I wanted to show him how appreciative I was, so I gave him my first BJ. Turned out I wasn't ready for that job and I threw up the entire lasagna on his junk. God help me, I can't believe I'm finally sharing this story. That is horrible, but I'm sure there's a meat lover's joke in there somewhere. After I saw Eric propose to Donna on that 70s show, I went out and got a 25-cent ring from the local Pizza Hut and proposed. At school, in front of everyone. I was 16. I'm glad you could all share a cringe with me. To answer the burning questions, she did say yes. We didn't last, though. Sorry, no happy ending here, just teenagers doing impulsive things. I tried to defend her honor, and I got the crap kicked out of me by 3 guys. I earned cred for taking a beating, but she thought we should just be friends after witnessing that. We took a break, and I posted a video to Creep by Radiohead with the caption, "For that special someone." Oh, I almost cringed off my chair writing this. I was 17. We had just had a fight. I drove to his house and blasted "Scars" by Papa Roach from my car and just stood awkwardly at the end of the driveway waiting for him to come out. I really wish this weren't true. He did come out, but only to tell me I'm overreacting and he'll see me at school on Monday. Be right back, gonna go curl under the blankets to hide from the memories. I let him play with me down there at school with no idea the people at the next table could see. I told her I loved her within the first 24 hours at the school parking lot. My friend accidentally whimpered, "I love you," as he climaxed while losing his virginity. Talk of the school, apparently. She showed me a half-undressed pic and I was too embarrassed to look at it. After the first date of going to the movies, I never put my arm around her because I was too scared. We sat in my driveway and she didn't say goodnight because she was waiting for me to kiss her. I did nothing, so she finally kissed me. In defense mode, I licked my lips all the way around my tongue like Scooby-Doo does with the cotton candy in the theme song intro. I even did the kill me. I hit my girlfriend with my car. It was a complete accident. We're still friends, and it's a story that still comes up in conversation every now and again. Look, people, the author here has his flaws. What are they? Oh, I don't know. They sing in the shower. Sometimes they spend too much time volunteering. Occasionally, he'll hit his girlfriend with his car. So sue him. No, don't sue him. That's the opposite of the point I'm trying to make. Well, she said that she thought we'd be better off just being friends, so I decided that I needed to do some big grand gesture to prove my love. It always worked in the movies, so what could go wrong? I practiced singing the song for weeks on my ukulele and figured that I would wait until after her softball practice was done and surprise her. I sang "You're Beautiful" by James Blunt. I made sure a couple of days before that I completely copied his hairstyle in the video. Except because it was 2006, I dyed it completely black and tried to do an emo version of it. It's a freaking miracle anyone talks to me after that. Obviously, it didn't work. My only saving grace was that it was a drizzly April day. I thought that just made it even more romantic, and the only people who actually saw it was her and two of her teammates. They looked at me like I had 3 heads when I was singing, and then the second I finished, she turned bright red and yelled, "What the frick?" And her teammates laughed for a solid 5 minutes. I was so mortified I couldn't move. Some points. I wasn't a terrible singer, but I wasn't good. It didn't help that I sometimes added intentional breaks in my voice to make the song more emotionally powerful or something dumb like that. After I was done and stood in horror as her friends laughed at me and she stormed away, I kind of did a sad George Michael-esque walk in the rain to my car as I contemplated what would be easier, moving school districts or just driving off a cliff. We weren't friends after that. It was super embarrassing for her, and everyone teased her for months by singing James Blunt songs to her. I definitely had it worse, but high school kids are jerks. It also didn't help that about 2 weeks after, we were assigned as lab partners and she raised her hand and asked the teacher if she could switch partners, and the whole class snickered. It seems sweet reading the story, but really it was super creepy and I put her in an impossible spot. If anything positive came from it, I never had any troubles approaching women at bars because I already knew what the worst possible thing that could happen was, so it was only uphill from there. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My first makeout session with someone was with my first girlfriend. We were in her bedroom, turned out the lights, and went at it on the floor of her room. After a while, I feel something wet on my face. I didn't want to stop, so I just ignored it and carried on. She noticed it too and decided to turn on the light because something is really wet on our faces. The light comes on and turns out I'd had a massive nosebleed and there was blood everywhere. I was covered in it, she was covered in it, and there were bloodstains all over her room. If that wasn't embarrassing enough, when she went to the bathroom to clean up, her mum caught her in the hallway. She saw the blood and immediately screamed. Her assumption was that I was beating her daughter up and I got chucked out of the house. Took a lot of time and explaining for me to show my face there again. I also lost my virginity to the same girl to the song Kool and the Gang's Celebrate. That was cringy as heck too. I used to take laps around the playground and slap stickers on her butt. I don't know what I was thinking. I got us matching dog tags with our anniversary on it after dating for around 6 months, and I would secretly get very sad when he wouldn't wear his. Guilty of this too. After we broke up, he posted a video on Facebook of his friend throwing it in the air so he could shoot it. My God, I cried a little. I was 17. For the record, I grew up in Mississippi. Super American in the country. I was upset when it happened and I didn't even respond to him. Should have saved the video to make a meme, but I don't have a Facebook anymore and it was a long time ago. It was pretty funny looking back. I was super shy back in the day and I really liked this guy who had weirdly flirted with me in one of our classes. He told me I looked like some random celebrity when I wore my hair down and how hot she was, so I never wore my hair up again for the entirety of school. I replied later by slipping a note in his locker but didn't sign it. A few days after that, I threw in a t-shirt I thought he would like. He didn't know who it was from until weeks later when he finally wore it to school to see if anyone said something. My BFF at the time did, and he realized it was me. Super creepy on my end. We ended up dating for a day before we broke up because we were stupid kids. Now 15 years later, we reconnected and are now married. So, totally worked as planned. A girl that I was about to start dating mentioned she really wanted to go to New Zealand at some point in her life, to a group of people, not even just to me, so I immediately priced plane tickets and lodgings to New Zealand for our honeymoon. Then, unbelievably, before we actually started dating, I told her that I'd priced our honeymoon. My defense was that if things did work out, New Zealand was so expensive I'd have to start saving then. We still dated, but only for about 2 months, and neither of us have been to New Zealand. I let my mum purchase custom matching airbrushed shirts of 2 people kissing, with my girlfriend's and my name on them. I'd report my mum to CPS if she suggested that. I met the love of my life at age 17. AKA I started getting my brains effed out for the first time. She was not shy talking about her prior boyfriend who had a super huge hog that she claimed was very painful. Of course, there were other details about their relationship that she shared too, and she was complicated and we had a lot of fights which I couldn't get my head around. At some point, I decided it would be a good idea for him and me to talk and compare notes. So, I wrote him a letter proposing this. Mutual friends reported that he was utterly flabbergasted by this, but he approached me and said, "What would you like to talk about?" I think I babbled for 20 minutes after that, but I have no further recollection. Looking back, what the frick was I thinking? That is a very bold move, but honestly, I think I can say that it was the best possible reaction you could have gotten from him under the circumstances. I think most people could have reasonably expected silence or violence. Incidentally, that's my band name. I was so nervous on the way home. Being 14, his dad drove us to my house to drop me off. I leaned over to kiss him on the cheek. A quick peck, and then I threw up his mum's fajitas all over myself. We finally did the deed when at a party at my friend's house whose parents were home. The mother knocked on the door and said, "What's going on?" We didn't stop. I was too immature to talk about us one day doing the deed, so I'd giggle and say, "Duh, you know." Had my first relationship at age 17. We were each other's first for everything. Basically only ever gave him hand fun times because he wasn't very hygienic. He insisted on keeping his underwear on, so I'd have to rub him over his boxers. He'd splooge inside his boxers and then leave them on for the rest of the day. The odd time he didn't have boxers on, he'd grab a sock and splooge inside of it, and throw it in the laundry pile. His mum did all of the laundry. So disgusting every time I think about it. He French kissed me after eating a bacon double cheeseburger with onions and all sorts of other stinky stuff. I told him I had a bad experience with French kissing with a guy before him, lies, he was my first kiss obviously, and I would appreciate it if he never did it again. Bonus cringe, I rubbed vapor rub near my eyes to make myself cry when I broke up with him and told him I was overwhelmed and needed to focus on school. I was in 8th grade. Back in 8th grade, I could not wrap my head around the obvious signals he was giving me that he was not as into the relationship as I was. I was extremely clingy and would draw doodles of us and write the mushiest notes to him on the daily. I would quiz him on what he liked to talk to me about on AIM every night, fishing for compliments from him constantly, making up new pet names every week. My best friend was dating his best friend, who most likely felt the same reluctance due to intensity, and we would arrange double dates that were mostly me and her trying to find a way to corner the boys and make out, which was extremely creepy behavior looking back on it. Reading my journal from that year is horrifying. I wish I could go back and apologize for the cringe. If you're reading this, sorry about that crap, Mitchy Poo. I know I'm not alone in the shame of horrible obsessive behavior. Since so many people have asked, I've dug up my journal I mentioned from my basement storage. Kinda wish I'd actually buried it reading it again. The entry I'm posting seems to condense how awful I was into a short and terrible package. How can someone so terrible be so popular? Hopefully the real world isn't like that. Sigh, spelled out in the book. I heart Mitch. On AIM, AOL Instant Messenger tonight, I asked if he liked the semi-French and he was extremely vague. Maybe I'm going too fast. I hope he liked. I thought I might have seen him wiping his mouth on his sleeve. How terrible would that be? At least he loves me back. I really hope I'm not a bad kisser. I love kissing. So if I was bad at it, wouldn't it be kind of hypocrisy or ironic? I don't know. What scares me is that high school is next year. Well, I think I can probably experiment with Mitch. I don't think he'd mind, smiley face. I've never made out with someone before. I wonder what it's like. Is it gross? Is it like animalistic, like grrr? Mitch is so sweet. I want to be with him all the time. Asterisk, groan in pleasure, asterisk. When we were watching the movie at Tom's house, where I got the semi-French, he put his hand on the curve of my waist and it felt so good. It took all I had to not just start making out with him right then. I think that's like a pleasure point on women. I'll have to find out where his is. No, I'm not going to start groping his crotch. Something a little more innocent, please, with a Z. Although me and all my friends have this inside joke about how I'm his leather lady. Lol, can you imagine? Whoosh. Kiss me, Mitch, now. I want to talk to him so bad, but it's kind of late. I'm gonna have to find a really good place for this journal. I don't really know who I'm writing to. Hopefully not my future kids. They'll be all like, gasp, Mom was really bad. I'm not bad, I just have lust issues. Lol. To the person who's reading this, don't judge me. I was walking her home in our neighborhood. She says her parents aren't home. I say, cool, you have the whole house to yourself. and I walked back home, wondering if I'd ever get the chance to touch her chest. To answer the big question, yes, I did, eventually. Then we did more and were pretty bad at it. Then she faked a stalker in order to drive a wedge between me and my best friend, so I stopped seeing her. Up and down experiences all round, but hey, I got to do stuff to her for a while, once I caught on. We'd been texting back and forth, so I knew going to his house I'd lose my virginity. The guy opens the door wearing a full suit for the occasion and escorts me holding my hand into his bedroom. Jesus Christ. To give some context, it wasn't his first time. We'd been dating for around 2 months. I was determined and did go through with the deed. And what happened after was way worse than the suit. The guy had apparently told the entire neighborhood he was getting laid, and 3 or 4 of his friends broke into the house through the terrace in the middle of the deed. I promise I'm not making this up. After the whole episode was over, he left at the friend's party without inviting me. So he wasn't really a gentleman after all, as the suit had suggested. A couple of days later, we broke up. At the time, I felt horrible, but now it makes for the juiciest story. First real girlfriend in high school, we used to talk over the voice calls on MSN Messenger late at night. She just wanted to hear my voice, and I very quickly ran out of things to say, so she said I should just read whatever book I had around. She spent the next 30 minutes listening to my "Your New Getaway Computer and How to Use It" booklet. What are the funniest things you see posted by your no-filter friends on social media? She's caught up in a pyramid scheme, talking about how great it is not to work on a Monday. Friends is a strong word, more like Facebook acquaintances. But one twin just slept with the other twin's boyfriend. He's taking me out tonight. I'm the luckiest girl in the world. Men are all the same. Such frickin' pigs. Ugh. Oh, me and him are going to look at puppies today. Frick it. Enjoy your life with that new B-word. See if I care. Movie night Saturday with boyfriend. So nice to have someone stay in with you when you don't want to go out to the bars. Frick everything. Frick guys, they all want the same thing, and I'm fricking done. I kid you not, this crap has been going on with them very publicly for maybe 2 years now. But then again, the only reason I'm still friends with her is for my sick viewing pleasure, so who's really losing here? This high school friend of mine, I'm 42 now, so is she, meets the man of her dreams on Tuesday. Oh my god, I've met the one! He's at her house cooking for her by Thursday. Romantic dinner at home with my man. I love you, babe. Complete with pictures of a really basic pasta dish. The weekend is spent taking her 10-year-old daughter from another marriage to Disneyland or beach or other cool outing. Look at Mr. X and my little girl bonding. He's father material for sure. Haha. By Monday, it's all gone to crap. Once again, I guess you can never really know someone. Thanks again, men, for being such buttholes. I guess I'm just a forever alone kind of girl. 2 weeks later, it's the same thing, different guy. Lather, rinse, repeat. Every second of it plays out on her wall for the whole world to see. It's a train wreck and I can't stop watching. And I have to add this. Last Tuesday, the same girl posted a picture of the guy she was having dinner with. The caption read, "Love of my life." Today, Saturday, she posted that she's now engaged along with photos of her engagement ring. She's known him for 6 fricking days. The saga continues. I wish I had this much free entertainment from my friends when I was younger and on Facebook constantly. It wouldn't have felt like such a waste of time. I mean, it would have been, but it wouldn't have felt like it. So, this guy, screw it, we'll call him Mike because that's his name, dips out, leaves his wife, and bangs a super hot 20-something. This girl, let's call her Kay, is my ex-wife's nemesis. She had worked for me at a bar as a waitress and was always flirting with everyone. Ex-wife was convinced I was doing her for a while until she found out about Mike. While still hating her, she finally believed me. So time passes, we move, Mike and Kay are together for about 2 years. I'm divorced, my ex-wife moves back home and actually starts dating the new manager of the bar I used to manage. I'll refer to him as C. He's a really good guy and a friend. He even called and talked to me about it first, even after 2 years of divorce, because we used to go fishing together and were drinking bros in our early 20s. Him and Mike are super great buddies nowadays, as when I left, I guess they just started hanging out with each other. A lot. This has led to an absolute crap storm on Facebook recently, because both Kay and ex-wife think the other is screwing their man. I never thought Kay was the jealous type, and my ex-wife was fairly cool up to a point, when she started cheating on me and then got all paranoid that I was cheating too, apparently. Now every time Mike or C go out, a war erupts in the comments between the women. I've noticed a trend that whichever of the two posts first, she's apparently the lying working girl.
Stop posting on my man's fricking profile, you fricking hussy, etc. A few of the best parts. Mike leaves town frequently, bangs other 20-somethings, comes home, gets busted, crap goes down on Facebook. She's got albums, still labeled, Mike's a fricking scumbag, which are full of the texts that she screenshots and sends to herself. Yet, I love my baby so much, about 5 times a day on her wall. C is a full-blown alcoholic, as in 18-pack a day kind of guy. Then he tops it off with a bottle of Sailor Jerry. He cheats on a fairly regular basis with the girl I dated before my ex-wife, if he's not on one of his 30-day cleanses for probation, every 6 months or so. I know about his cheating because my brother still lives there and goes fishing with Mike and C all the time, and she tags along too. I keep telling my brother to get a picture of them all together just so he can post it up on Facebook and tag every fricking friend he has in that town in it. But he hasn't given in to the dark side quite yet. Which is surprising because he hates all 3 of those women because they hate his wife for pretty much no reason. She's great. Maybe it's because she's actually happy. Plus, Kay is hot as frick and it's bikini season. Selfies all day long. I've got a guy I knew from high school who's obsessed with Herbalife. He even tagged his darn wedding photos with Herbalife, and on all of his photos of him on his honeymoon with his wife, he had an Herbalife t-shirt or hat on. At some point, I wouldn't have been surprised to see Herbalife advertisements all over his wedding reception photos. This is my little daughter, AmITheA. Just kidding. In 24 hours, I will be deleting Facebook. Real friends will know how to contact me. I'm so sick of all the attention-seeking and drama-filled behavior on here. I've tried everything, but this is the only way. Inbox me for my number, but only if you're a true friend. Peace, Facebook family. It's been real. My friend posted this 3 days ago. Yep, there's a former business associate of mine who posts this every few weeks. He's an older gentleman who failed a mayoral run, constantly posts religious warnings and overall voices his opinion on everything. Then if he posts something that gets too much negative attention, he's all, well, I'm quitting Facebook. A week goes by and he's right back at it. Deleting your Facebook is the new running away from home. We all know you're doing it for attention, and we all know you'll be back. I knew a girl in college who gave up Facebook for Lent. Then, every time there was a party, she'd agonize about posting her pictures because, I gave up Facebook, but I think God would want me to share the joy that my pictures bring. Almost everyone in the dorm was a theater major, and we're a largely agnostic group, so we kept telling her, Special K, no one gives a frick. Do whatever you want. You're not that great a photographer. Shut up. She failed Lent. Oh, I don't know. My friend who only drops vague hints at the hope for sympathy. Sometimes people make me really angry. I just want to go to bed and forget this day happened. Oh my gosh, I know the feeling. What's wrong? I'm sorry, what's going on? You and me both. Let me know if you need something. Let me know if you need anything. Sorry I haven't responded. It's just personal and I'm not going to talk about it. Even more so is the little army who responds. Every fricking time. What's wrong, hon? Everything okay, sweetie? I'm here if you need to talk. You're an amazing person. Don't let anything get you down. Stop it! You're enabling this nonsense. It's always the exact same people and they never get a response. Ever. Makes me crazy. I know someone who keeps posting that her kids don't love her and are pushing her out of their lives for other people in their lives. Plot twist, it's my mother who I live with and spend the majority of my time with. When me and my roommate had a job together sitting at desks after hours with nothing to do, we'd go on my Facebook and find long conversations of people arguing and do read-throughs like a play rehearsal. Each time we'd read through as different characters like Macho Man Randy Savage or Rodney Dangerfield. This is one of the greatest and cheapest time killers I could ever suggest. My 91-year-old grandmother is calling out every family member who uses the F word in their posts and is shaming them. She's also threatening to wash their mouths out with soap like she did when they were kids. It's adorable. Yeah, I think that's genuinely hilarious. No negativity there. Although personally, up until my current age and weight advantage, I probably would have been scared enough to let it cow me into submission. My granny was a bit scary. Frick you, dude. You fricked my girlfriend, you fricking piece of crap. Jeremy, you watch your language, young man, or I'm gonna wash your mouth out with soap when I see you. Evidently, Peggy is desperate for more water in Farmville too. Peggy must live in Southern California. A mother of a teenager I know shared graphic images of the bruises her soon-to-be ex-husband gave her. That didn't bother me, I felt bad for her. But when she decided to add photos of her bare butt and hoo-ha with very minimal bruising on them, Things got weird. She makes her daughter take down posts she thinks if there's too much cleavage showing. Incidentally, she's also complaining that people reported her photos because they don't want to face domestic abuse. I mean, I'll face it, I just don't need to see your downstairs area again, Barbara. Someone keeps reporting his photos as containing inappropriate content. The more he complains about it, the more likely I am to start joining in. By the way, it's not you, Steve, or Steven, or Phil, or Sergio, or whoever else you think you might be. You're not a beautiful and unique snowflake. Oh god, that reminds me. A while back, a guy on my Facebook accidentally posted a video of himself just cranking it, and it took almost a full day before he realized it. So for days, there were tons of posts from his various family members telling him how disappointed in him they were, how his grandmother had seen it, etc. Probably the greatest actual Facebook drama I've experienced. How the frick do you accidentally do that? It was all an honest mistake. I was filming myself thrashing the mule like normal. I had to use my laptop's built-in camera because my memory was full on my digital camera and phone. Too many self-stimulation videos, you see. You know how it goes. Got to monitor the form and correct weaknesses. Well, after I finished, I saved the file. How else am I going to re-watch it later? I can't do it in the mirror to watch myself like some low-born psychopath. Totally unrelated, I wanted to upload to Facebook a video of myself going down a water slide at Schlitterbahn. Unfortunately, I'd saved both files to the same folder and titled them Wet and Wild and Wet and Wild 2. You can guess the rest. Easiest mistake to make. It probably happens 1,000 times a day. There are lots of people chiming in to say, he probably made it for his girlfriend and then it happened while his phone was in his pocket. Super easy. Call me old-fashioned, but when I film myself working the hog, I don't save the evidence for later. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My mother is the worst on Facebook. Don't even get me started on the group messages she sends to the whole family. Well, fine. Don't come to my party because you obviously don't care enough to cancel the plans you already have. And I'm like, Mom, I live across the country. I'm not going to take the day off work to come to your 3-hour-long Memorial Day party. My mom won't act ugly on Facebook, but she'll post something and call me later and say, did you see what I posted? Well, why didn't you like it? You should have liked it if you saw it. There's also, I'm going to be heartbroken if you don't wish me a happy Mother's Day on Facebook. And she'll also organize family events solely for the purpose of gathering pictures for Facebook. Not kidding. She'll say, I want to get pictures to post. When I know who's getting a 5th divorce in 12 years, I can't even begin to touch the drama surrounding that one. She's 19 and pregnant. She graduated from my high school early, but all of her posts from last night were vaguely aimed at her boyfriend and then saying, I wonder what people from my school will think once they know I'm pregnant. They'd probably have a cow. Baby mama drama, and he always prefaces his posts by saying, y'all know I don't like airing my dirty laundry on here. There's a laundromat in a town near where I live that has a billboard that says, dirty laundry goes here, not on Facebook. I thought that was pretty clever. For a while, I was really into reading this girl's drama about how her baby daddy keeps getting arrested for assaulting people. Her posts usually fall into one of these categories. A revelatory post about the crazy things going on in her life, usually involving her baby daddy not being able to find jobs or getting fired, quitting, hating their jobs, legal issues with the baby daddy's assault charges, lack of money, just general life problems. Or B, egotistical, condescending posts about how happy she is, how wonderful life is, pictures of the baby, bragging about the baby. Or C, frick off haters, get out of my business kind of posts. My husband has this woman on his feed that he keeps around for entertainment value. She posts about 2 things only, it seems. Just got out of church. Sermon was beautiful today. I feel so blessed. Praise God. Sent at 11:30 a.m. Then she posts a picture of herself licking a guy's crotch. Woo! I just sucked 5 guys for some Patron. Sent at 4:30 p.m. She then posts a picture with Bible verses and something about Jesus working in her life, and then posts a suggestive picture with the end of a bottle in her mouth held at crotch level by some guy. From what I gather, this woman really loves sucking eggplant and Jesus. She desperately wants to get married, but at 38 has never had a boyfriend. She had a few suitors, but none of them matched her claim to have attended at least 2 colleges. She's a kindergarten teacher. She's religious, and she daily posts quotes from dead priests. "Hey there, baby, I spent a week at Ohio State and another week at MSU. You wanna bang?" No real Facebook drama, just vague booking. "I'm so over it. Some people are just such buttholes. Blah blah blah, more crap about some specific person I won't name, or better yet, confront offline and in person. I'm not sure personally what it's about, but you know who you are." I love the "you know who you are" posts because they never involve me and I know it. But I like to post responses getting all defensive like I think it's about me, and then they get mad and tell me to F off because it's none of my business. So I can then snidely remark, "I guess it isn't very clear who the people you're referring to are now, is it?" In other news, I'm apparently a total butthole on Facebook. Yes, you are kind of a butt, but we forgive you because it's funny. Also, I haven't seen this kind of post since I was a teenager. I'd hope that no adults are doing it, but who am I kidding? Of course they exist. She thinks everyone should show sympathy to the Duggars, and says we should all be praying for them instead of judging. "We all make mistakes," she says, "but all we can do is pray and forgive. People can change." And then, one of her apparently former friends got on there and started going off about how she was judged by the lady who put the status and how she'll never forgive her for what happened after she said she'll always be there. There were over 60 comments on the status. After about the 65th comment, the status lady states she doesn't think this is a public matter, and it's inappropriate to put it all over Facebook where everyone can see. Status lady is a single mum and wants everyone to know it, is constantly complaining about not having enough money, time, or resources to help her girls. Does nothing but ask for handouts. One year around Christmas, she put on Facebook that her family is coming into town, but she doesn't have a car big enough, so does anyone have a van she can borrow? Oh, and also can someone maybe come and put some Christmas lights on the house? But you have to bring the lights because I can't afford them. Does anyone have any gift cards to anywhere fun? Because I would hate for them to have to sit at home the whole time without anything to do. Or the typical, "This thing in my house is broke. Does anyone know someplace that doesn't charge an arm and a leg to fix it?" But instead of wanting to know someplace that's cheap, she really wants someone to offer her to fix it for her for free. Because when someone comments and says, "These people are good," she says, "I probably won't be able to afford it," or something of that nature. 10 out of 10 would be her friend again just for the entertainment value. My friend thinks Obama is the cause of homosexuality and naughty content online. She also thinks Hillary Clinton should be strapped to a rocket and fired at the Middle East. So it's mostly standard. She's going on some snidely elitist rant about how her art is clearly so much better than that fake basic bullcrap that everyone else posts, all while ripping on this poor girl's new tattoo that she was very excited about. Yes, a dreamcatcher could be seen as a tad basic, but damn woman, it's what she wants and it's something she puts time and effort into planning out with her tattoo artist. It's also a well-done tattoo, just kind of simplistic in design. My friend posts about how he changed his lifestyle and now he's better than everyone else because he eats healthy and lost about 30 kilos, about 66 pounds. Pictures of healthy food 6 or 7 times a day. Hashtag grind, hashtag motivation, hashtag no excuses, hashtag time is now, hashtag work. My friend is reposting every single spam post. Find the I and your crush will ask you out. Multiple exclamation marks with an I in the middle. He's trying to get the love of his life to notice him. Eventually, it worked. His crush commented, "Dude, shut the frick up with these posts. None of them work, idiot." Crushed his dreams forever. I know one who's currently separated from his wife and jumped into a relationship with another woman, then broke up with her after 2 weeks, so he bought himself a second used Mercedes. My cousin and I are both Syrians, and we live outside. He posts daily, either ranting about football, he's a hardcore Italian fan, so just imagine the posts when Juventus lost, and he also goes on long rants about Syria. And he literally rants about everything in Syria, starting from the regime, to the Islamic State, to the Free Army, to every other armed group over there, to the Muslims living there, the Christians, to Allah and Jesus, to the cats in the street, to the nostalgia of the old vids and pics of Syria, and specifically Homs, since we're both from there. And he has about 1,600 followers, half of them close friends with him, and mostly they're religious. You should see their comments about being offended, and he replies to every single comment justifying his posts. And I really enjoy his posts. They're funny and so spot on, and I would have shared them with you if they weren't in Arabic, because they'd lose their humor with translation, and I'm not a good translator. One girl keeps posting screen caps of the amount she's owed in unpaid child support. and tagging the kid's father in the posts. My friends are having a really tough time accepting the Caitlyn Jenner situation and are arguing that there needs to be a third restroom. Well, I guess they aren't arguing because nobody is commenting, but still. He's very sad because people don't like his selfies enough. He posts about 7 times a day on Facebook and it's always a selfie, and if he doesn't get enough likes, he posts another mopey one. Her baby daddy has been texting other women, cue screenshots of said texts, trying to get a motel with them in Ohio. But that's fine because she's not giving their unborn child his last name and he's definitely not signing the birth certificate. And it just goes on and on. An acquaintance from high school who I haven't seen in more than 20 years constantly posts his exploits with his on and off again girlfriend. Apparently she's a crystal addict, doesn't work, and will do whatever necessary to get a fix. Every week or two they're back together, talking about how much they love each other and plan to get married. Then she needs a fix. Suddenly my feed is full of him calling her a substance-addicted working girl who blows her dealer for crystal. They fight online, he drags all his friends into the drama, proclaiming he knows who his true friends are, and he's learned his lesson. He swears he's done with her and never going back. The last time it happened was about 3 weeks ago when he caught her with her dealer, and the dealer shot him in the leg. Gratuitous pics of the wound, and him at the hospital soon followed. It grazed him, nothing life-threatening. He said it was the last straw. No more of that no-good crystal hussy, he had learned his lesson. They got back together again yesterday. Someone posted about how his girlfriend of 3 years was cheating on him, and displayed a picture of the guy, tagged his girlfriend and joined in super personal discussions on this post. Not 2 hours later, he said that people need to leave him alone and that he and his girlfriend will figure it out on their own, and that these matters are personal. Like, what? This one girl who went to my middle school made a video of her and her niece dancing to a song called Bless the Bottle, celebrating that she got the results of a paternity test back and the father is a guy who is married. They were dancing and singing along with baby bottles in their hands and throwing unused diapers in the air like it was cash. Since apparently this guy's wife works at a county job like DMV or something, so they figured this baby is going to be an 18-year payday. He still regularly compares himself to Batman and Solid Snake, is bitter about his ex cheating on him after he took her back 7 times over a year ago, claims he gets laid regularly but only posts pictures of him hanging out with underage girls, talks about all the substance users in our hometown when he himself still smokes spice, and generally just seems like he's 1 day away from going postal. Keep rocking on, Sean. I'm rooting for you. What's the worst way anyone has screwed you over? Not too terrible, but it sucked at the time. My college roommate took care of all the bills, so I just wrote him a check each month for my half, and he paid the rent, electricity, etc. Then one day, some of his friends from out of town visited for the weekend. I come home on Sunday night to find him half-packed. He says he's going with them. This kinda leaves me in the lurch since I don't have another roommate lined up or anything, and I can't afford the place on my own. But frick, I can't stop him from leaving. I suppose I could insist that he pays for another month of rent or something, but it didn't occur to me. So I said whatever and started looking for another roommate the next day. Then later that week, I get the first overdue notice. Then I get a call from the landlord. The F-word hadn't paid any bills in 2 to 3 months, so he was taking my checks, cashing them, and using the money for himself. The previous Christmas, he'd kept a friend's cat while she went home for the break. The cat stayed in his room, which was a disgusting mess. Ants eating the food that he'd left or spewed up, crap-stained underwear everywhere, just a disgusting place, so I felt pretty bad for the cat. After he'd moved out, I went in there and found among the moldy plates and bugs the complete, full and overflowing cat litter box. The cat had crapped and peed in it for 6 weeks or so, and at some point just begun crapping and peeing everywhere else instead. The cat left sometime in January. He had moved out in July. Luckily, I was able to get most everything straightened out, but it was super stressful for a while and I still resent him. You understand that by law, if you ever see this person again, you're required to punch him directly in the crotch, yeah? Duly noted. On the positive side, my next roommate sold a green herb, so I got a lot of it for free. When my dad passed away, his house was put up for sale at a public auction. The auction was set up by a notary. I was present at the auction, but apart from 2 other couples, no one else was. Because of the exceptionally low turnout and me being underage and not in the know about this kind of thing, the price was about a quarter of what the house was worth. It was sold. I now have to pay off a 20-year loan to be able to afford a house, while I could have had one for free. Afterwards, we found out that the notary had set up a deal with the bidding couple and forgot to schedule the sale in the official channels. Basically, no one showed up because all of 5 people knew there would be a binding sale that evening. My advice, if you're dealing with a notary or lawyer and you're not very knowledgeable in the particular field they're working in, get a second opinion. Heck, get a third if you want to be sure, because there are people out there who won't think twice about taking advantage of a 15-year-old who just became a half-orphan. The running commentary after this story was that the notary in question acted in bad faith and could probably be liable for legal action. There was no follow-up on whether justice was served, so I guess we'll never know. I moved out at 17 and had no checking account. Me and my buddy both worked 2 jobs in preparation for college expenses the next year, and we gave cash to the third roommate to handle bills and rent, only to find out months down the road that she had given not a single frick at any point or paid bills or rent for months. We kicked her the F out, and my other buddy fled as well because the cost of making it work was much too high. So I was stuck sorting the entire thing out myself. Goodbye, entire savings up to this point in my life. Hello, 3 jobs, college, and ramen every night for 2 years. I had my best friend's 14-year-old stepsister accuse me of doing the deed with her. She told all of her friends, and then when her parents found out, instead of telling the truth, she told a bigger lie. It's been almost 2 years now, and I'm still fighting the court case. My at-the-time girlfriend's mum offered me a job worth double what I was making now, but she had to interview me to make it look official for HR. I applied, but HR didn't like that I already had a job, so she told me to quit and apply again. So I quit my job and applied again, went in for the interview, and everything was great. My application was processing and I was totally going to get the job. I didn't get the job. After her and I broke up like 2 years later, she just admitted she was jealous I didn't have any debt, and she wanted me to lose my job so I'd be forced to get a loan, so I could be in debt like her and see how it feels. Don't stick your wang in toasters, or however that saying goes. Anyone else hear alarm bells at HR didn't like that I already had a job? Being claimed as a deduction for being in college while I was in the Persian Gulf, circa 1991, and end up being audited by the IRS. Having multiple utilities, gas, electric, phone, opened up in my name while I was in the Persian Gulf, and none of them being paid for, and they were in a totally different state, more than once. Having countless credit cards opened up in my name, none of the bills paid, and having a totally destroyed credit rating for 6 years, while I was in the Persian Gulf. Thanks, Mum. My mother was and is the epitome of a welfare queen. If there's any angle, trick, or scam she can get away with to get free money from someone else, or most importantly the government, she would not hesitate to lie, cheat, or steal her way into it. I was forced at 5 years old to go to the local store to spend $1 food stamp, before the credit card thing, to get her 95 cents in change so she could get something like cigarettes. I learned the hard way how she operated, and by the time I was in my early 20s, I disowned her. She moved away to Vegas to be near my sister to try and mooch off her. My sister learned after about 5 years, and my mother moved back to where I live in some vain hope that I'd forgotten. I had not. She continues to call every now and then to ask for money or to fix her car, or fix something else. Not even to ask about her grandchildren, of which I have 4 of them with my hot wife. Screw her and screw the horse she rode in on. My wife agrees, as do my children. I've never been on welfare as an adult. I work hard and pay for everything I have, and that of my children. And yes, I'm the 99%. I can only hope that people follow this advice when it comes to their credit and lives. Watch it like a hawk and do not trust anyone. I purchased a car from a buddy. Its engine was bad, but it did have a bunch of custom parts on it I was going to use on my car, which was the same model. I didn't have time to get the parts off, and it sat around for a couple of weeks. His dad got impatient and had the car junked. No one told me this was going to happen, or that there was a timetable. I asked for my money back, and the guy laughed in my face. Screw that guy, I couldn't even go to the small claims court. I never got a bill of sale, never got the car's title. I wholly blame myself for getting ripped off. Expecting people not to screw me, I was a noob at life. My girlfriend tells me she can't leave with me when I'm moving, but wants to come in 1 to 2 months when the semester is over. During this time, we talk every day. I continue to help her pay the bills, etc. 2 months pass and she says she's ready to move. Come and get me. I rent a truck, drive from Colorado to Virginia, and upon my arrival find a note in the door that she had an anxiety attack and is no longer sure she can move. No call to talk about it, no face-to-face, a note on the door. FYI, 4 weeks later she calls saying she was wrong and she loves me. I wished her well and never looked back. I mean, that seems like something done out of fear rather than malice, but yes, she should still have at least talked to you. Hope your life went forward well. I'd been dating a girl for around 9 to 10 months. We were great together, no fights, no drama, just kept it chill and had the time of our life. She got a promotion 2 hours away from where we lived and needed to move. She was nervous about the distance, but I only had a year left in school and I'd join her. Well, moving day came. She was busy working and had been living in the new spot for a week or two. I grabbed my dad's truck and my band's trailer, and with the help from my parents, we got all of her stuff loaded up and made the journey. Once we'd got everything moved out and put into the new apartment, I gave her a call to see what she'd want to do for dinner and the evening in general. She essentially replied, "I can't do the distance, sorry." I was completely stunned, and to add insult to injury, her stepdad gave me about $30 for gas after hauling all her crap 2 hours away. Took care of a very sick girl for 8.5 years. She had no responsibilities whatsoever except to do things that helped keep her healthy. She had everything she wanted and I was happy to provide it. When we broke up, she packed up all of my things, I was out of town, and then proceeded to tell horrible lies about me in a thinly veiled attempt to bully me away from fighting for my belongings. Ironically, I would have given her anything she wanted. All she had to do was ask. Over 3 years later, I'm still stunned by what happened. I was so blind. I'm not looking for sympathy here, but I was sleeping with this guy, always protected. One day, he couldn't find a rubber and convinced me he'd just been tested and was clean and wasn't sleeping with anyone else, and convinced me that we didn't need to use protection. Then he infected me with a transmissible disease. Lesson learned. Trust no one, ever. Parents got divorced, dad kicked my mum out, I was still a senior in high school. I graduate and take a job to try and save up. He decides to get a new girlfriend to spite my mum. Talks crap about my mum and lets this new lady bully me. She likes to F with me by smacking a hammer on my bedroom wall really early in the morning, sneaks into my room while I'm at work and steals things from me. I came to my dad begging and crying for him to help me. He calls me crazy, tells me to lock my doors every day in my own house, and accuses my sister of doing it. I catch the girlfriend stealing from me on the last day of work and tell my dad. He kicks me out the very next day. I haven't talked to him in over 2 years and I have nightmares about him. I made him pay me back over $1,300 that she stole from me, or I'd sue her. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A long time ago, began dating a girl. The girl turned out to be a genius-level sociopath. How do I make this long story short? A member of her family engaged only in manipulations in order to control her, so it's all she learned from growing up. Her IQ was like 140 or higher. She hid it. Seemed normal to everyone. Honestly believes that everyone exists to serve her. Won't ask for things normally. If she wants something, engages in social manipulations. She's deadly patient, too. We were together on and off for a while for years. Some highlights, or lowlights in this case. She manipulated me into selling most of my possessions, then spent the money mostly on substances. Stole my bank account information, bought herself tons of crap, then something for me. The birthday present overdrew my account, starting a chain reaction of crap. I didn't find out till almost a year later. She threw out letters from the bank, but continued writing bad checks from my account. A year later, I almost received felony bad check charges, and I had to hire a lawyer for about $7,000, plus the amount of the bad checks, so that I wouldn't have anything on my record. I found out much later that she kept 6 or 7 guys on the line at all times, all for different reasons. She was long-term dating most of us, because she thought we would have a future. Future doctors, lawyers, basically anyone who had a shot at making it. A couple were just because they were good to do the deed with, and I found out she went to swinger parties and used to bed about 2 random guys per month. This, of course, totally unknown to me at the time, she had me and everyone else totally fooled. After I finally sorted it out that she was no good and left, temporarily she always roped me back in until I found out the whole truth, she tried, and in many cases succeeded, to sabotage any relationship I attempted to start. She actually was able to manipulate people into spying on me, manipulate guys into hating me and trying to fight me, and stuff like that. I'd go to parties and random guys would show up and try to kick my butt, cause she had done the deed with them, then told them that I'd hit her, and so on. She even got a couple of girls to seek me out, lie, and get me to go on dates with them so they could report back to her. My phone was blocked and I'd be unable to contact them, and then I'd find out later she had been contacted by my ex and that she had sat her down and lied, saying things like I was married, I had 2 kids, I had transmissible diseases, I was cheating on the girl with the person I was dating. All of course totally untrue, but she'd present convincing evidence, then make friends with the girl and increase the cult of women who hated me. We were off and on because of this, and I didn't know that she was the cause of any of it for years. She was that darn slick. For years and years. I could go on. The craziest part was I looked back at what she said to me during our first date and realized that she was setting up manipulations that very first day that she didn't kick in until sometimes 2 or 3 years later. That crap still blows my mind. It means our first date, she was planning to screw me over in all of these ways. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call a textbook sociopath. I think the worst part is actively preventing the author from escaping and getting his own life. What a piece of work. My mum made me so sick with her behavior that I ended up in the ER as a child because I was spewing blood for days. I'd developed stress ulcers. Here's just a few of some of the things she did while I grew up there. She always dumped her emotional crap on me, such as how my dad wasn't doing the deed with her anymore, how he didn't please her, and how he didn't love her anymore, and how daddy was so mean. One day while crashing at yet another stranger's house, I overheard her telling my father that she didn't love him anymore and wanted a divorce. She came into bed with me, cried, took off her wedding ring, gave it to me and says, "Daddy doesn't want me to have this anymore, you might as well wear it." Then she put it on my finger. That doesn't sound so bad reading it, but imagine all the thoughts a child would have about wearing her mother's wedding ring after hearing they are getting a divorce, and all of the responsibility placed in that moment. I ended up consoling her to sleep like she was my baby. Story of my life. I'm so sorry people like that have a license to breed, even if it means I wouldn't have existed as a result. That sounds emo, I mean it honestly and seriously. I lived with my father. Mother lied and said she had a steady job and a house, so I was sent to live with her because she had ruined my dad's credit by running up huge debts in his name without his knowledge, causing our house to get foreclosed on. She lived in a van behind an adult club. When all of my things arrived, she simply dumped them on the side of the road and I never saw them again. I spent the next year living like a homeless person at 10 years old, and she bullied me not to tell anyone. Finally, I did and my dad came up and got me, but gosh darn that screwed me up. I was a year behind in school, ill, and I lost all of my stuff. Little personal, but screw it. I just started college and I was living with my grandmother on my father's side. First time staying with this side of the family. Father never cared for me and was incarcerated for his whole life. Needed a place to stay until I got my crap together. Within a month of living there, father was released from prison and came to live there as well. I didn't know he was going to stay there as my grandmother didn't say anything as she knew I didn't want anything to do with him. Anyway, after about another month of awkwardly living under the roof, my father comes home in a car that he got from an auction. He wasn't working at the time and I assumed he was selling substances or had stolen the car. He got arrested again. A friend joined college same time I did and he got his refund. I didn't. After some investigative work, I found out my father took the refund and cashed it, and that's how he got the money for the car. Teed off, I pressed charges, and eventually my grandmother found out about it and kicked me out. I was homeless for a few days. Best friend found out about it and his parents gave me a room. In conclusion, scumbag father took my refund from the grant I received for college and cashed it to buy a car. My ex ceases our activity in the bedroom, citing how it goes against her faith and she feels guilty about it. I'm fine with this and we date for 3 more months. Everything seemed great until the end where she tells me she's 6 weeks pregnant. I'm not very good at math, but I do know 3 months is greater than 6 weeks. I don't see the problem here. Someone else got her pregnant. That's your get-out-of-jail-free card from a crazy person. Within a week of my ex-wife having an affair, she emptied the bank account clean from $10,000 and moved out of state with her new lover. I found out through his wife and bank account records. Left me with all of the debt and bills. 2 years after the divorce, she opens multiple credit cards in my name and social security number. Thankfully, I have Credit Watch and caught this. Now working on sending her to jail for ID theft and credit fraud. I had a brand new Yamaha R6 and I let my friend try it. He's experienced and wanted a new bike, so he tested my bike. He did a wheelie and of course dropped it. Totaled the bike, blamed me for not having full insurance and didn't pay a cent. Have not talked to him since. But now I have a brand new R1. Never let anyone ride your motorcycle. If you break it, you pay it is what I always tell when friends or family want to ride my motorcycle or car. I quit my job so I can watch my kids while my wife was deployed to Afghanistan. She falls for a contractor over there and dumps me. Now I am jobless, wifeless, and I'd be freaking homeless too if I wasn't living at my dad's house. Oh, and when she returns from Afghanistan, she wants full custody of the boys, and I just turned 30 today. Happy fricking birthday to me. I accidentally broke the small glass door of my closet. Dad came in, saw the shattered glasses on the floor. I told him it was an accident. He pointed his finger at me and yelled, "You're an accident!" I was 11. Just remembering what he said is depressing. This is a terrible thing to say to a kid, and sadly enough, it's distant enough from me that I chuckled a bit at the childishness of the father's response. Bad narrator. Bad. My brother is a contractor, and after offering to handle our whole home renovation, he started a demolition, then decided he was too busy to finish and abandoned the project. He just didn't show up for 2 weeks, and when I contacted him, he showed zero remorse for screwing me over. I've paid him almost $20,000 up front as a deposit for work to be completed. The renos started in June. Right now, the master bedroom has no fixtures, there's no doors anywhere, the back wall of the second floor is missing, it's October and getting cold by the way, the bathroom is gutted to the studs, the kitchen has missing walls and there are massive holes in practically every remaining wall. Before just walking off, he'd just not show up for days at a time or only work a couple of hours, then complain he was underpaid the rest of the time. On top of that, due to him having poor credit, I let him use an extension of my credit card with his name on it to purchase materials, which he then proceeded to use to buy gas, food, and booze for himself. When I asked him to stop, he agreed and then continued to do so. I'm now out $50,000 in labor and materials, and now I have to find another contractor. Let me repeat this important fact. This is my brother who's done this. My grandmother did very well in life, and in death left a sizable amount of money to the family, including me. At least that's what I thought, because she showed me a copy of her will about a year before she passed. I get a copy of the will mailed to me by my uncle's lawyer, and it has her handwriting on a new amendment, giving all her estate, her outstanding CDs and investments over to him and him alone to do as he pleases. She was in hospice care for 6 months, and I'm betting money she was high on painkillers when he convinced her to sign the amendment. I still have nothing from her, and he's a Catholic priest. Frick. Spent close to 10 years working for a guy who I considered to be like family for less than minimum wage. I helped him build his business up into a very successful entity. He had promised I would get a raise and my own store to manage. I trusted him because I'd known him since I was a child and he'd never steered me wrong before. I did everything he said, and each time I did something new that he asked for or reached a new goal, he said it wasn't done right and I'd have to do it again. I brought in a good amount of money from his clients and kept them there. Yet he said no when I said I needed more money to survive. I told him I was cutting my hours back because I had to go get another job. He said I was being selfish, and when I took time off to spend with my family and girlfriend, he said I was neglecting my duties. Told me I needed to quit or start over with reduced pay and no title. I quit. Soon after, a number of clients left as well. His wife, who ran the books, is now leaving him and his other employees have left as well. Clients continue to leave on a regular basis. The place was my life for a long time. It was my dream to have my own location. He promised it to me, but screwed me over. I lost 10 years of my life. Best thing that ever happened to me, though. What's your best example of sweet, sweet karma? One morning I stopped at Dunkin' Donuts on my way to work for some coffee. It had already been a not-so-great morning, so I wasn't in the best mood. The guy a couple of people ahead of me got a large iced coffee, which is 32 ounces at Dunkin' Donuts, and he ended up being parked next to me in the parking lot. So I'm getting in my car and happen to glance over and notice that he's in his car, but his enormous coffee is on the roof of his car. So I waved at him and pointed to his roof. He looked at me, and for whatever reason, his reaction was to flip me off. I don't know if he thought I was making some kind of rude gesture, or if I was just a weirdo, or what. But I got to watch him pull out of his parking space. His coffee stayed put while he backed out, but as soon as he braked to shift gears, that thing just dumped all down his front windshield. It was honestly one of the most gratifying moments of my life. Happened to me with a bucket of KFC. I thought the girl that was gesturing at me was just saying hi. Next thing I know, chicken was raining down my windshield. I picked up some of it. If it didn't hit the concrete, it's still good to eat, right? Was driving home slowly during the aftermath of a major ice storm. Dallas and Fort Worth don't have salt trucks or plows, so there was a thick layer of ice on all the highways, which are mostly elevated so they take ages to thaw if the temperature stays low. A guy in a sports car blows past me and a bunch of other people just trying to stay on the road. He's changing lanes really quick and speeding up and generally just being a massive jerk on a dangerous road. Couple of miles later, the guy's car is spun out, still upright, and stuck in an icy ditch. He was fine, standing next to the also fine car, spitting mad. So I'm glad he wasn't hurt, but man, did he deserve to end up in a ditch for driving like that. Seriously, we get that you might know how to drive on ice in the Arctic, but Texas doesn't have the infrastructure you're used to. The roads aren't built for ice. There are no plows. We aren't rusting our cars with salt over the 2 days every 4 years that ice is over. It just ain't the same. The kids in my neighborhood, including me, liked to toss snowballs at passing cars. One day a guy in a purple pickup truck drove by and we lit him up with 4 or 5 of the little snowballs. About 2 minutes later, the same truck comes back up the road, revving the engine loud. He zooms by and his arm comes out of the window holding a snowball about the size of a soccer ball. Somehow he nailed the neighbor kid right in the chest with that snowball, and the kid crumbled to the snow from the impact. We heard him laughing his butt off as he drove away. I never saw the purple truck again. Don't throw snowballs at cars, it's more dangerous than it seems. For the drivers. I still feel like a tool when I remember, even though I was only 11 or so. This is so goddamn funny and perfect karma. I bet that guy was smiling for the rest of the day. I know I would have been. Just try not to think about the possibility that you hurt anyone. A few years ago, I was out at a pub with some friends for my birthday. A few of them are sitting outside and my best friend coughed. This apparently infuriated a girl sitting nearby, and she had her boyfriend just start beating the crap out of my best friend. My best friend was female, by the way, and her boyfriend. My best friend is a little scrapper, so she can hold her own in a fight if she needs to, but the guy is the one throwing the majority of the punches. Police obviously got called, and the guy legs it before they arrive. The police took a few statements from my friends and start trying to find the guy in order to arrest him. But even after a few weeks, they still hadn't found him. Best friend gets a call from the police station soon after to say that they'd arrested the guy who'd beaten up her and her boyfriend. Turns out they hadn't been able to find him because while he was running away from the pub that night, he'd tried to jump a high fence, fallen, and hit his head, resulting in a 6-week coma. Best part is that after being in a hospital for 6 weeks, he got arrested. Even better, head trauma probably ensured he remembered very little about the night. The guy probably had no idea why he was being arrested. I don't know, man. If you're the kind of guy to start throwing punches at other people on command, you probably have a pretty good idea of why you're being arrested. Me? Sir, your brake pads are worn down and your rim is worn. There's also a crack in your head tube. The customer? I just need the puncture fixed. Okay, sure, it's not safe to ride though, you understand? It's been fine for years. I proceed to fix the puncture, the customer rides away and not even 5 meters from the door the rim collapses under the pressure, and he goes over the handlebars. It's been fine for years though, right? People are stupid. Some of the crap I see is crazy. We have this one customer who's an engineer, he actually is, and he runs his bike to death, then refuses to spend money until something fails. Latest thing was the handlebars. Engineers can be especially dumb. I have classmates who are incredibly gifted when it comes to academic work but have 0 life skills or common sense. A guy I know almost burned his room down when he set fire to his curtains using a hot plate because he didn't know he was supposed to keep an eye on the food he was cooking. This kid I would go to school with. Met him my freshman year and could tell right away he was a huge idiot. He would constantly brag about all the substances he did, and he would call girls fat and stupid C-words right to their faces. He even hocked a loogie on one of my good friends who tried to get into his fraternity's party. This kid is also 6'3" and 220, so unless you're that big, there's nothing you can really do. Well, just last week he called some girl fat, and when she got up in his face, he knocked her out and literally body-slammed her friend coming to her aid. The girls went to the police and told them everything. When they went to his house to arrest them, there was a glass pipe and clear view. So through reasonable cause, they searched his room. They found a ton of Xanax, white snow, and green herb, so not only is he going to jail for attacking the girl, but also felony substance charges with intent to sell. Lesson to be learned, karma is a B word. I used to rent my sister's house. She moved out with her boyfriend, now husband, and my brother and I rented the house from her. We were in our early 20s and boys, and the place was never going to be immaculate, but we certainly didn't trash it. My sister has somewhat unreasonable cleanliness standards, however. She inspects the place one day while we're at work and flips out, kicks us out 2 days before Christmas. The next tenants absolutely destroyed her house, tore up floorboards and spray painted the walls. Destroyed it. We were messy, but would never have done that. There was no apology. Our relationship was very rocky for years afterwards, hardly ever speaking to one another. I think in a way she blamed us for the damage, like if you didn't make me evict you, this never would have happened sort of way. But we had experiences to draw from our pasts, where not talking to family has resulted in unfinished business when a family member dies, and she's always been more like a mum to me as there's quite a large age gap between us. We sort of just started hanging out again, mainly for my nephew, as I was his main male role model for years, and eventually we became friends again. Though I'm a little salty with her at the moment because we were supposed to see the new It movie together and she's gone and seen it without me, I'll get over it. And no, we don't talk about it, it's not funny yet. The moon landing conspiracy theorist who followed Buzz Aldrin until Buzz punched him right in the face. Why is it always so gosh darn satisfying when you see the girlfriend be like, just ignore him, he's stupid, just ignore him, and then they go too far and she just kind of moves to the side, giving the signal to punch him. One of my former bosses, he was a hotel manager for a corporate company, worked off salary and never had to clock in. The guy was as dumb as rocks. If you were new and had a question, he'd literally only say, look at the manuals. Never anything else. He was present maybe 2 hours of his entire week. He never came in, somehow never got caught after 10 years of working there. Well, the guy got canned 3 days after I quit. It all caught up with him eventually. I've heard 3 years later and he's still struggling to find a job. When you've held something down for 10 years and get fired, it doesn't look good. Yep, some of my best managers have had the same statement in new jobs. There are no stupid questions. And while that isn't necessarily true, it's a great thing for nervous new hires to hear if you can back it up. A dude on a bike somehow caught a ball kicked at him and he ran away with it. I came back to a restaurant one day a week I used to be head chef at after I left the industry. They were short-staffed and willing to pay me an absurd hourly rate. First day back, the new head chef, who didn't know I'd worked there before, literally screamed at me and told me, "You, bossy C-words like you are why I treat women like crap." The restaurant owner happened to be dining at the bar when this happened, and the guy in question was promptly fired. I hope he's miserable. Haha. Vile sexism aside, how dumb do you have to be to do that? It was later revealed to me that he has a very severe alcohol dependence and problem. I think that accounts for the volume, at least. Back when I was washing dishes at age 16, this one waiter would just throw plates and silverware into the bus tub I used for soaking, particularly caked on or messy food. The crap would splash all over me every time he threw it in there. Eventually, I just shot him with the industrial dishwashing hose, and he got sent home because he couldn't wait tables soaking wet. It is well known in every restaurant I've ever worked in, 10 years in the industry, that if you splash the dishwashers while putting crap in the tubs, you could expect a spraying the next time they saw you. Don't mess with the kitchen. Dish pit counts as the kitchen. Not me, but a friend of mine did this. During the fall, his neighborhood would put bags of leaves out on the curb for a pickup. These punk kids would always drive over the bags, making a big mess in the street. So one day, he takes a stack of cinder blocks and hides them in the bags. He said he could fit 8 blocks in each bag, and then fill up the rest of the bag with leaves. The kids drive by, aim for the bags, boom, big damage to their cars. He said that they stopped their silly behavior after that. Man, I had a substance dealer live across the street from me, and his customers were some of the biggest jerks I've ever seen. They hit my mailbox, garbage cans, completely drove through my ditch. The city maintained cutting the ditches, so of course the grass there was always waist high. I lined my ditch with huge, as in 200 pounds each, slabs of stone. First day literally removed one guy's bumper and incapacitated a different car. Easily damaged 15 cars a week. My first-year college roommate cheated on each of the 3 girlfriends he had that year. I'd bet my house that he continued to do this all through college and beyond after I stopped living with him. Just last week, I found out from a mutual acquaintance that he'd discovered his fiancée had been cheating on him about a month before their wedding. I mean, you had that coming, you idiot. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I tried to bully a kid by hitting his bike with mine, and I went right over my handlebars. I respect that you'd come into this thread and be like, I was the jerk. My friend, I'll call him Zeke for convenience, and I will go to this old dock from time to time just to hang out and talk because the area was beautiful, and there's an old building where an event site used to be. So we just dig through the massive lost and found or spray paint some hip cool art, yo. Memes mostly. Well, one time Zeke brought a friend who was on Snapchat or something on Zeke's phone the whole time yelling about some stupid breakup, like screaming. He got aggressive because we told him to chill. Well, Zeke wanted his phone back eventually, but the friend refused to give it, because that friend was a prick. The friend proceeded to drop then catch his phone over the 30 feet deep water. I grabbed the phone and calmly said that was stupid. The friend whipped out his own phone, but he preferred Zeke's, I'm still not sure, and said, "Watch this." He dropped the phone and missed the catch, and it sunk into the pure brown water, descending quicker than the kid could open his mouth to scream. My friend was dating a guy and she told me he had a 500 horsepower Mustang. I went for a ride with him. He later totaled that one, doing 40 miles per hour in the rain with traction control off, with drag radials, and he got a newer one with 700 horsepower. I turned down a ride in it and talked my buddy out of it. The guy had skills but nothing resembling judgment. It passed traffic at 140 miles per hour with 3 passengers. As of Friday, that's now his 700 horsepower coffin. Well, that got darker than I was expecting on this thread. I definitely had friends growing up that I wouldn't get in the car with in this day and age. Not sure if this happens to any of them, but I hope not. I came from a pretty large school that was very competitive about academics. I finished 51 out of 650, and I was very happy with that. The valedictorian, who I barely knew, said to me the week of the graduation that she didn't know how she didn't have more competition. High school is so easy. Then she said, "Like, take you for example. You're pretty smart, but you set yourself back in life by not trying to be valedictorian. Like, you couldn't get into an Ivy League with your rank, and my valedictorian title gets me in wherever." On top of that, my best friend was getting paid to write essays for people, and I knew Miss Pompous valedictorian brought many from her. I mostly forgot about this girl and moved on with my life. I graduated college, moved back to our hometown, and got a good-paying job. The first weekend back, I ran into her. She works as a cashier at Target. You bet I went through her line to say hi. I sincerely wish her all the success in the world now, but it also was really good to see reality found her. Don't you love it when a big fish in a small pond gets introduced to the ocean and realizes how small they actually are? You're not hot crap if you can't swim against the ocean currents. How good did this feel? Hey, insert valedictorian name, how are you? Yeah, I just moved back to town and I got this great job at amazing company. How about you? Are you working here to pay for uni? No? This is your full-time job? Oh, okay, that's cool. Valedictorian, my butt. In the mid-2000s, my sister passed away from cancer. The entire school knew about it because she had been able to attend the school for weeks. She had to stop shortly after, but everyone knew we were siblings. Anyway, I had this bully that tormented me fairly often, mostly stupid kid stuff. The day after, he told me in the lunch line, "I'm glad your sister died." That was the first and only time I punched someone first. I broke his nose and got a 10-day vacation courtesy of zero tolerance. When my friends and I dumped bottles of glue into this other kid's snow boots in 6th grade because earlier that day he nailed me in the face with an ice ball and laughed at me while my face bled. His boots were completely ruined, and he couldn't go outside for a while. I don't remember the teachers doing anything about it because we didn't have security cameras at the time, and the kid was a little crapbag, so they probably didn't care. Today at lunch, I kept telling my preschool student to stop looking under the table because he was going to hit his head. Halfway through my 3rd repetition, he banged his head on the table. He stopped. I and my parents were on the highway, and we were at a part that didn't have passing lanes. I think it might have been a national park or something, and this guy kept on tailgating us. He almost nudged our car as well, and since he couldn't pass us, we were stuck like that until we passed the park. The guy seriously almost caused us to crash our fricking car, with how ridiculously dangerous he was driving. He passed us eventually, and about 5 minutes later, we saw him pulled over by a cop. There's a video of some D-bag in a truck annoying a lady on a highway. She's filming him, and he very aggressively pulls up beside her and flips her off before purposefully cutting her off. But when he slams on the gas to get out in front of her, he loses control of his truck and immediately wrecks it while the lady continues to film. God, that felt good. One of my co-workers' kids was being super crappy to the animals. We train horses and take people for trail rides, as well as have a crapload of farm animals. He was chasing the older horses and the chickens with a stick, and they were all just kind of putting up with it. Now my horse and the milk cow were chilling together in the corner, and he tried to hit the cow with a stick. And oh boy, neither of them were having any of that. My horse swung his head at the little piece of crap and showed him his teeth. He would never actually bite or touch him, but he knows how to look scary as all get out when he wants. And the cow head-butted the kid into the dirt while the horse had him distracted. Guess what? He has a lot more respect for animals now, and he stopped trying to hit them with sticks. For those of you wondering why we didn't make him stop, we figured he'd hear it better from a 1,000-pound animal. Non-commissioned officer in the Royal Navy. A few years back, had a lazy officer, a pilot, doing my report for the year. He never filed it and my promotion went back at least a year because of that. I later heard he got promoted to lieutenant commander. Turns out he was faking his medical documents so he could keep flying as he was no longer medically fit. Discharged from the Navy, no pension and a criminal record. If he was honest, he would have got a medical discharge and a medical pension. I was promoted in the end, but it took longer than it should have. Two of my friends got involved in a love triangle. One did the deed with the other's wife, then told him about it because that's what a real friend would do, and then after a few random incidents, this butthole decides he wants the wife as his new girl. He calls the other friend and tells him he's coming to kill him and take his wife. Highly drunk, by the way, to which he was told, "If you come here, I'm going to crush your skull with a bat." He proceeded to walk for hours to get there to do what, do you ask? To get the crap beat out of him with a bat. Didn't die, but was severely beaten, and it took surgeries to fix things, including a shoulder replacement and completely removing about 6 inches on his humerus. Investigators said they estimate he was hit between 35 and 50 times. There's a strange scale of trying to do the right thing, failing to continue to do the right thing, effing around and finding out here. What an interesting story of self-discovery it was. This was years back in high school, but I remember this football jock who was your typical butthead to everyone just because he was stronger, cooler, and all that jazz. He also did substances which he thought made him cool. Him and I didn't get along well, even though we were on the same team, because he loved bullying people and I'd tell him to F off. Anyways, it was his dream to join the army and become a ranger out of high school. On grad night, our school went to Disneyland, and he never showed up for graduation. I found out later that he tried sneaking substances into Disneyland on grad night, and since he had turned 18 recently, they booked him as an adult. Can't exactly become a ranger with a record of dealing hard substances to minors. Felt like that was payback for all the bullying and nonsense he pulled for years. The company I worked for got bought out, and one of our executives basically sold many of us out with demotions, firings, etc. It was bad enough that it was happening. But this guy just wouldn't be honest and candid with us during the process. At some point, people got wise to the situation and there were mass resignations. The executive that had sold us all out got fired one day due to his inability to retain the team and left the building with tears in his eyes. I was at the beach and this lady was sunbathing in front of me with one of those aluminium tanning sheets. She had her leftover food in a styrofoam container wrapped in a plastic bag and a couple of seagulls were beginning to grab at it. About 6 or 7 were sort of pecking at it, and I got up to shoo them away. More had congregated and I tapped her shoulder to let her know what was up. She looked at me, rolled her eyes and literally waved her hand, dismissing me, and laid back down. The 6 or 7 seagulls had doubled and I once again got up, shooed them away and alerted her to the upcoming disaster. She once again rolled her eyes and was clearly not to be bothered by a concerned beachgoer. At this point I was mildly hallucinating at the edible I'd taken earlier and said, "Frick it!" and watched about 50 seagulls slaughter her leftovers. She got up in a frenzy, birds and food everywhere. Never have I laughed and pointed so hard at a person in my life. It was uncontrollable. Tears were streaming down my face as she got up, terrified and shocked at what had just happened. It was so satisfying. I don't think I've laughed harder at anyone else's expense since. Just thinking about it now brings back wonderful feelings. How have you got a repeat marketing or scam phone call off your back? I got a call from the Social Security Administration. I asked for the company's address, and he paused and said, New York, America. I took a call from the "I hear you've had an accident that wasn't your fault" call that I get about once a week. It's automated at first, but as soon as I said yes, I got put through to someone. I spent 20 minutes explaining how someone reared into my lane and crashed into me and it wasn't my fault. At the end, when they asked me for details on the damage, I explained that they'd bent the handlebars a bit, but the bicycle was mostly okay. They hung up on me and I haven't heard back from them in about a month. I always answer, "Hello, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Telemarketing Fraud Department, how may I help you?" For some reason, they always hang up on me. Yeah, got a call from the duct cleaning people. I told them I don't have ducts, I have geese. They just hung up on me and haven't bothered me since. I told them that I was a member of their branch a floor above them and that they misdialed. They said, "Frick you," and hung up. I didn't get a call back from them for a few months. Oh man, this is great. I think I'm gonna have to finally start picking up on these idiots and take my own spin on this. Let them go through whatever little spiel they have, add in a little giggle here and there, and finally just start laughing and tell them it's James or Cindy down the hall and ask them out on a date. I asked them for their social security, and they hung up on me. Whack. Haha, I just did the same. I answered all worried and said, "So, I can borrow yours for a while instead, right?" They got angry and hung up on me. No calls back though. The thing that really gets them is wasting their time. They're getting paid to make calls, so the longer you keep them on, the better. One thing I like to do is start rambling a story that goes nowhere, like Grandpa Simpson does on The Simpsons. You know, survey? Yes, I've taken some surveys in my time. Why, I even worked on one. Now, I think it was in 06. Or was it 07? No, it must have been 06, because that was the winter I crashed my Buick. God, I missed that car. It was such a beautiful shade of green like the jungle. Now, I've been to the jungle, and boy, do they have mosquitoes. You know, as a working voice actor, I can't help but feel like I'm really missing out on some opportunities to have some fun with these people, instead of my usual frustration. A pity that most of mine seem to be robots, but oh well. I'm sure another scammer will call again since it's just an act that all of them do, but I got a social security scam call. They told me they'd found 22 pounds of white snow in a Toyota Camry with some blood in the front seat because they always say that exact line. I responded, "Oh my god, that's terrible. So are you telling me that this was not you who left the car there?" "No, that was me, but I had 30 pounds of white snow in that car. Are you telling me that 8 pounds went missing?" So he was very confused and I was accusing him of stealing it. Then he started swearing at me until he hung up. No, it was a silver Toyota. Wait a minute, is the body still in the trunk? The last call I had was the standard, "You've been in a car accident." I had a little chat with them, but they hung up once I told them I'd been decapitated in the crash. I always hit the button to speak with a person or get more info, or sometimes they call with a live person to begin with. I put on my most seductive voice and say, "Hey baby, how you doing?" They usually hang up immediately. If not, my next response to whatever they say is, that sounds really hot. What are you wearing?" Pretty close to 100% hang up and just don't call back. This guy keeps calling me, telling me that there's a warrant out for my arrest and the cops are looking for me. Cool. I'm like, "What town do I live in? What town do you live in?" The guy gets teed off and hangs up. I crap you not, he calls me back in a week. I'm like, "Oh my god, it's you again. Did you figure out what town I live in yet?" And he says he fricking hates me and hangs up. Never got another call. I tried to troll a guy who was clearly calling people to get their bank account information by saying they were giving away money to help college students. He was from India and was dedicated to his job. I tried to tee him off for about 30 minutes, but he kept interrupting me and I eventually told him to F off and hung up the phone. He kept cutting me off and saying, "But my friend! My friend!" I got a call. They started reeling off this massive script. Finished probably after 2 minutes of solid talking, and I politely sat through the whole thing. I paused and said, "Sorry?" She said, "Again?" and started the whole script again from the start. Another 2 minutes solid talk wall later and I said, "Sorry?" This time there was a bit of frustration in her voice. "Again?" And once again did the whole 2 minutes again, aggressively this time. "Sorry?" F this, and the call ended. Just play dumb and eat up their time. They're playing a numbers game and don't want to spend 30 minutes with someone that gives them nothing. In that 30, they would rather get shot down 20 times and maybe find one old lady that they can trick. My grandfather got fed up with telemarketers one time in the late 90s and early 2000s. His response? He stayed on the phone with the guy for over an hour, acting super interested in the guy's sales pitch. He had them so convinced that they actually sent a sales representative to our house. Grandpa then proceeded to string this poor idiot along for another few hours while he sat there smoking cigarettes and constantly changing the conversation. Then, once the guy finally thought they'd come to some sort of business agreement, my grandpa flat out admitted that he was never actually interested and told the guy to F off and leave the property. Never mess with a bored old man with a lot of time on his hands. Not that I want to sprint towards the grave, but I can't wait to be retired and have nothing to do. I may actively seek this crap out. I unplugged the landline. It was either that crap or my father-in-law, so win-win. Answer the phone, connect to an agent, mute your phone, and carry on with what you were doing. They quickly take you off their dialers when you waste their agent's time. I'm mostly the same, but I've stepped it up. Answer, connect, mute the same, but when a person picks up and starts speaking, I rapid-fire press numbers on my keyboard until they hang up. My favorite response to it has been, "Beautiful song, sir. We won't call again." They did call again, though. We don't have a receptionist at our office. Everyone is responsible for answering the phone. But it seems like I'm the only person willing to answer the GD phone here, which means I get all the spam calls. I recently started just deliberately annoying them and playing music on the keypad, and it actually helped. It's funny to see which spammers will hold out the longest. The longest I've had someone on mute was 4 minutes before they hung up. The narrator is almost getting sad that he doesn't have a lot of telemarketers in the country that he lives in to experiment these kinds of shenanigans on. We get maybe one a month here. I've got one unknown caller that likes to cuss me out for leaving him on mute, to see if I'll take him off mute to yell at him. I think he just wants to sample my voice. A few weeks ago, he just left a voicemail saying, "John, you're a prick." I'm curious as to what his scam is, but not curious enough to actually engage. This is a landline. One phone in my house is just an old Plantronics headset. Doesn't have caller ID, but allows me to answer with it already muted. The only time I pick up without a known caller ID is using this headset, just for entertainment. Sometimes I'll unmute it long enough to say hello, then go back to mute. If I hear the call center boop tone, then I can just hang up at that point. My friend speaks English, Spanish, and Russian. He would just start switching randomly between languages, and each language had a different personality. He would confuse them into total submission. They rarely called back. Got called that there was virus on my computer. Told them this was impossible, as I throw my computer in the river, so the police couldn't get any evidence on me. Haven't heard from them since. I love these guys. I have a gaming keyboard with a bunch of extra keys off to the left that are bound to similar keys on the normal keyboard. SteelSeries stealth marks, such as 1 through 9, WASD, Control-Alt-Space, and a handful of others. So many times I get people upset because when they ask me to look at the lower left corner of my keyboard and ask me to tell them what key is to the right of the control key, I answer the C key, because that's what's there on my computer. Completely throws them so far off their script that they implode and normally start cussing me out. I tell the Microsoft ones that they couldn't possibly be real because I pirated my copy of Windows. Sometimes we get down to the tangent of them knowing who I am and that they're sending the police to arrest me if I don't pay up. Either that or I play super dumb and ask if they're talking about that there invisible web machine. I used to be a cable guy and I can't tell you how many times I had to explain to a customer that their computer was not in fact the internet, and that their computer not working didn't mean that their internet was out. I try to pass on that frustration to people who really deserve to feel it. My dad and I were on a road trip with his phone connected to the speakers via Bluetooth. He gets a call about this guy wanting to give my dad a credit card with some high credit for just $1. My dad knew this was a ploy to get his credit card details. He led him on for at least an hour until my dad just goes, "Nah, I don't have $1 to spare, that's too much for my poor self." The scammer was so mad he was yelling, "But sir, it's only $1! My dad just laughed and hung up. Good times. We laugh about it still. The phone scam that puts you through to someone who says you've been in an accident no longer calls me because I just kept telling them an elephant ran out in front of my car and it was a hit and run. Didn't get the plate. My wife got a call from Microsoft. I acted confused and asked if they were from a help desk or something because I'm on my work laptop. After a bit, I told them I work for a big tech company, and if my laptop is having problems, it should be HR calling me. They panicked and hung up, pretty sure she hasn't gotten another one since then. It didn't help that she didn't own a laptop, she only had her company one, and that mine was a Mac, so we literally didn't own a Windows box at the time. My mom has ruined one of these calls unintentionally. I run Ubuntu on her laptop that she only uses for mail and online banking, and I'm the one who maintains it. She got one of those calls and actually talked to them for a good 10 minutes. She really tried to follow the instructions and everything. Finally, the caller asked which version of Windows she was running. Ubuntu? Ubuntu. And they hung up and never tried again. My wife says, "I'll just pass you on to my technical person," and hands me the phone. The last time I kept a guy on the line for about 5 minutes, playing dumb and trying to find the start menu. After a while, I let him off the hook and told him it was a Mac, and he dropped the call. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I would receive a specific one 9 times out of 10. Your car warranty is about to expire. Press 1 if you'd like to be connected to a representative. So I would oblige and wait for someone to come on the line and say, make, model, and year of your vehicle, which I usually followed up with 2013 Hasbro ATV, or 2017 Little Tykes Tricycle, or something of that nature. I must have become a famous caller because they only called maybe 6 times after I started doing it, and they always started with, oh, look who it is. Eventually, it just stopped. I assume it's because they were tired of wasting their time on someone who was wasting their time. I usually reply with, what car are you talking about? And they'll say, can you confirm the year, make, and model? And I just keep asking, what car are you talking about? They hang up every time. Sometimes I get snippy and petty and say, well, you're calling about my car's extended warranty, which means you clearly know what car I own, so you tell me. They hang up, of course. I've done that with the credit card ones. Will this be for the Visa or MasterCard? You called me and you don't know what the card is? One time they called me on my work number, asked for the person who had the number before me, who retired before I joined, and said that his car was expired, giving what was as far as I know the correct make and model. When I informed them that said coworker had retired and could no longer be reached at this number, so they should stop calling, they informed me that my vehicle's warranty was about to expire as well, even though they had no idea who I was. I hung up on them at that point. I mean, on the last one, you can at least appreciate their can-do attitude to the situation, if not their intelligence. My main question is, how do people not just laugh at them when they realize what's going on? About once or twice a week, I'd get the Microsoft support phone call. For about 3 weeks, I would hang up on them. After about a month of this, I decided to screw with them. I let them give their line about how my computer is sending them errors, blah blah blah. I kept responding with, interesting, okay, fascinating, and other platitudes. When they said they wanted to connect to my computer, I told them this would be difficult. They asked why. I told them they called the server room for the Pentagon. I do not think I've heard anyone hang up more quickly. Even better, be an engineer at Microsoft and receive one of those calls while at work. Put them on speaker and proceed to mess with them with all your coworkers listening. Then bust out, oh, so I'm in the building on Central Campus in Redmond. Which building are you in? What's your alias so I can look you up? Sadly, they stopped calling us after that. After I had my first child, I kept getting calls about how the netting they used for my hernia surgery was being recalled, and that I could get a lot of money if I took the time to talk to them. I told them that I'd never had that surgery and I think it must be a mistake. They asked if I was in the hospital on a given day. I said yes, because I'd had a baby, not because I'd had any surgery. It looks like their records are mistaken and to please take me off the list. I thought that was that. I got a phone call 3 times a week for months afterwards, having the exact same conversation each time. I would say, take me off this list right now and I want to speak to your manager. They would hang up. I could tell it was the same guy. Finally, after almost a year of this crap, I was sitting in the car waiting for an appointment. I was pretty early and had a lot of time to kill. They call me again. Me? You've made a mistake. Take me off this list and I want to talk to whoever's in charge. He hung up. I realized that I actually had their number on my phone, so I called him. I have your number now. I'm not going to stop calling until you let me talk to your manager. He said, ma'am, please do not call this number again, as it's my personal cell phone. Oh man, it was so on when he told me this. I repeated to call his number over 20 times. Each time he answered, I said the same thing. I have your number now. I'm not going to stop calling you until you let me talk to your manager or take me off this list for real. At one point, he even said I was mistaken and knows I had hernia surgery. After what felt like the millionth call, a woman answered. Why do you keep harassing one of my employees? I've told your employee that he has the wrong person and to take me off the list. He refuses to believe me and has been calling me 3 times a week for the past 8 months. Ma'am, he is calling you because you're on our list and he can help you. Pretty much saying the same crap the other guy was saying, but with a really crappy attitude, like it's me who's the butthole here. I have his number now, and if you want me to stop, you need to take me off this list and never call again. If you don't, I'll call him every minute I have the chance. I spend a lot of time in my car waiting for clients to meet me. So, you guys will be hearing from me a lot. Alright ma'am, I took you off the list. Please don't call again. Click. And they never called again. Saying something like, hello there, you're speaking with sales representative from pleasure.com. What kind of adult toys do you want to order? Really scream it at them, by the way. It always works for me. Welcome to Jim's House of Pleasure. You got the dough, we got the hoe. I used to get a lot of unsolicited calls from a company who could sort out my debt. I got a call from them one day when I wasn't doing much at home, so I decided to have some fun. I gave a false name, false address, which they couldn't find in their system. I convinced them it was a new build eventually. I then went through my debts meticulously. Had them waiting while I found the paperwork, etc. Some of the debts were for my transition, and then reverting back because I'd changed my mind. 30 to 40 minutes later, I had over £300,000 in debt and was able to pay up to £4,000 per month to clear it up with them. The woman on the phone got her boss because it was such a big contract, and when the boss lady got on the phone, I told her I made it all up. I kid you not, she told me I was wasting their time and that I shouldn't do that, and then hung up on me. Never heard from them again. I get a call from a random pharmaceutical company saying that my supply of bedroom performance pills were ready for pickup. I told them that I had a complaint regarding the medication. I said that I only took half a pill and now half of my pee-pee was hard. Now my base is hard, but the tip was soft and I was teed off. I kept going on this rant for about a minute or so and they hung up. Happened twice and my friends and I are still laughing. So what the narrator is learning here is that a lot of these calls are based on saying that the recipient has an incoming order that they definitely didn't make in order to get the person to give up their details in order to cancel the order. If so, pretending that you're indeed a repeat customer who's already received multiple orders and recognizes the company is a terrific act of trolling. I always just say, Bill's orphanage, you make 'em, we take 'em. They usually don't call back after that. Steve's crematorium, you kill 'em, we grill 'em. I answer the phone as Detective So-and-so, and then I ask them who they are and why they called the number in a very stern and cop-like manner. Then I ask them where they are and act like I'm giving the information to someone else who is contacting Interpol. I ask a few more questions about their relationship to the number and advise anyone who's not already hung up that they should stay put and wait for Interpol to arrive for interrogations. It stopped calls to my classroom. I just scream for a solid 30 seconds. Whenever they intro with, "This is so-and-so on a recorded line," I always politely say, "I do not consent to being recorded or monitored." Something along those lines. It's always fun how they get so flustered and aren't sure what to do. They usually hang up and don't ever call again. I don't even know if they need my consent to record me, but it seems to work. Answer the phone with, "Ghostbusters, what do you want?" and get increasingly exasperated when they don't have a legit paranormal issue. It helps to loudly chew on gum. Not me, but my grandma. After Grandpa died, she started getting phone calls in the evening from an insurance agent trying to sell her insurance for her husband. She's very polite, but she always says, "No thank you," before she hangs up the phone. This goes on for almost a week. Grandma is really beside herself about these calls, and she tells my mum how upset she is with this man. One evening, I guess the guy was really impatient with her, and before Grandma could say, "No thank you," the agent asked, "But ma'am, you need your husband to be covered. Don't you care if he's covered?" To which she promptly replied, "He's covered with 6 feet of dirt. Is that enough coverage for you?" The man hung up and didn't call again. Grandma was a really nice lady and she was embarrassed that she lost her temper with that guy. My sisters and I loved that story. I got a call from one of those, "You've been selected for a free trip to the Bahamas" scammers. I told them that I couldn't do that right now. "Oh no, sir, you don't understand. It's free. You just need to—" No, I understand that, sir. It's just, I'm currently under federal investigation and I can't leave the country." "Oh, I'm terribly sorry, sir. I'll remove your number from our list. Have a wonderful day." Click. I always interrupt early and say, "Ma'am, I want to hear all about your product. But first, let me tell you about my personal savior, our Lord Jesus Christ." They usually disconnect before I get to the word Christ. "I'm ringing about your recent accident." "Oh, you mean when I ran over all those children?" I'm sorry? I know, I shouldn't have gone flat out in a school zone. Okay, Did they figure out which heads went with which bodies? Click. Which mysteries for the ages have finally been solved? The McStay family disappearance and murders. In February of 2010, the McStays, a family of 4, seemingly vanished from their home, abruptly. A carton of eggs was left open on the counter and the family dogs were still outside in the backyard. The scene was eerie and complicated because the home the McStays lived in was in the process of being renovated, so a neat and orderly home wasn't the norm at this stage. It appeared there was missing furniture and the usual mess that comes with construction, some freshly painted or redone surfaces mixed with older versions. From the outside, it appeared the family just took off. Neighbor had surveillance that captured what appeared to be the bottom of the family SUV leaving the driveway. Since they were living in California, the border to Mexico wasn't far, and authorities found footage of what appeared to be the McStays walking into Mexico with their 2 little boys in tow. The family SUV was found abandoned in a mall parking lot near the Mexico border. 3 years passed before the bodies of the McStays were found buried in shallow graves in the California desert. The bodies appeared to be in advanced decomposition and there were signs of blunt force trauma. A sledgehammer was also found buried with one of the bodies. Chase Merritt, a business partner to Joseph McStay, was arrested and charged with their murders in November 11, 2014. His trial was delayed for years until 2019. He was sentenced to death. Motive? Chase had a gambling addiction and had been and continued embezzling money from the business. His DNA was found in the McStay's abandoned vehicle. He bludgeoned his business partner and their family to death for money. The disappearance of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, author of The Little Prince, who was also a French reconnaissance pilot during World War II. In 1944, he took off on a reconnaissance mission from Corsica and never made it back, and there was never any evidence of what might have happened to him and his plane. Finally, in 1998, a French fisherman pulled up his net and found wrapped in it a silver bracelet engraved with Saint-Exupéry's name, and in 2004 a diver searched in the area and found the remains of his plane, which had apparently been shot down by a German fighter after all. Not exactly solved as there's no 100% confirmation, but the whole "what's the main buyer of glitter" craze from a while back. Turns out it's highly likely, basically confirmed in my opinion, that it's boat paint. Just boat paint. To clarify, there's an article I read about a bunch of guys trying to get to the bottom of this by talking to people related to the industry. One person explained that when he worked at a boat paint company, forgot the exact wording, they went through around 10 30-gallon barrels a week, and that's just one company. He also explained that most other companies he knew basically brought from GlitterX too. That is both an ending I didn't expect and far more tame than I'd hoped, although I don't know what I was hoping for. Some sort of gigantic glitter-faceted underground civilization or a particular body paint kink that half of the world was keeping secret from the rest of us maybe. Adventures with Purpose, a great YouTube channel where a group of divers find missing people underwater after years when the local authorities don't care anymore or just don't have the resources. There once was an urban legend or conspiracy theory about a video game called Polybius. The story goes as such. A mysterious arcade cabinet appeared in Portland, Oregon in 1981, with never-before-seen gameplay. It was captivating to the point of addicting, but that's not all. Many who played the game fell sick or went mad. Some versions of the myth detail that it caused hallucinations and nightmares or drove players to take their own lives. Every version of the urban legend mentioned mysterious men in black who would check on the game every now and again, leading some to believe that this was some kind of government psyop to make people go insane. Several times over the years, it was proven to have not existed, usually by pointing to a lack of contemporary media coverage or an FOIA request that found no records of such a video game. But this left people unsatisfied. If it truly were a psyop, of course these channels would come up blank. It wasn't until a retro gaming YouTuber and journalist called Ahoy, who's a god-tier YouTuber by the way, made a video detailing his investigations. He not only proved it to be false, he found the exact person, place, time, and purpose for which the rumor was created. Honestly, it's one of my favorite watches on YouTube and possibly my favorite documentary ever made. This guy's investigation is captivating and goes into an insane amount of detail. The Windsor Hum. Residents of Windsor, Canada, have been saying they could hear a hum coming from across the river in Detroit for the better part of a few decades. Well, it turns out that when a steel producer turned their furnaces off recently, when they closed up shop, the hum stopped. People had no idea what the noise could be until the factory closed. Also, a little fun fact, Zug Island, where the factory was located, was mentioned in RoboCop and was also the destination of SS Edmund Fitzgerald before it sank. Devil's Kettle Falls. A stream separates into two sections. One continues normally, the other spirals deep into a hole. All sorts of things were thrown down into the hole in an effort to discover where the water went. Ping pong balls, various dyes. It was even rumored that someone stuck an old car down there. Eventually, someone came up with a clever idea. They measured the total water flow above and below the falls and discovered they were similar enough to deduce the two streams joined back up relatively quickly. Q Lazarus, who recorded the haunting Goodbye Horses that was later included in the soundtrack for Silence of the Lambs, was a mystery for many years. It turns out she recorded exactly 2 singles, retired from music, and is now a bus driver. Forrest Fenn's hidden treasure chest that he buried years ago and left clues to where to find its location. It was found within the last 2 years, I think. Its value has been estimated as high as $2 million, depending on the appraisal of the items. The case of Adrienne Shelley, screenwriter for Waitress. Husband came home to find her hanging in their shower. It was ruled that she had taken her own life. The husband insists she was happy and would never have done that, promoting another view of the crime scene, where they found a shoe print that matched a construction worker in the building. Sure enough, the construction worker went to rob her and he thought he killed her, so he staged a scene to make it look like she ended things herself. And then the hanging ended up being the actual thing that killed her. The Erebus and the Terror were found a few years ago. The two ships were part of an Arctic expedition and disappeared 150 years ago. They had a whole section of the Museum of History in Ottawa for it a few years ago, with some remnants of the ship. It was very interesting. One thing that struck me was for years, the local indigenous population talked about those crazy white guys trying and failing to sail through the Northwest Passage, and ended up resorting to cannibalism in an attempt to survive. Their stories were ignored for decades, but what do you know, the oral histories ended up being an important part of finding the wreckage, and they found cut marks and evidence of cannibalism on some of the bodies found on King William Island. In 1997, a really weird and loud noise was detected underwater, and everyone was all, "What the frick was that?" In 2012, it was determined it was an iceberg breaking and/or rubbing against the seabed. The Sailing Stones of Death Valley. Rocks would magically move up 1,500 feet in the desert. Turns out it gets cold and freezes the ground overnight, and the rocks would get pushed by the ice sheets that melted under the wind. I would probably have assumed it was just very bored and very dedicated pranksters working through the generations, and somehow this amazing scientific phenomenon is kind of disappointing. Benjamin Kyle, man found beaten behind a Burger King with severe amnesia. It was a fascinating mystery until it was solved, then it was kind of sad. He had made TV appearances, had a couple of AMAs on Reddit, but no one could identify him. When his identity was discovered, William Burgess Powell, there was still a gap of 20 years in his life from 1984 to 2004. There's no record he had done anything. He had distanced himself from his family and had no friends, which is why no one recognized or identified him from his TV appearances. When he was saying his name was Benjamin Kyle, it was actually Benjamin. He was actually pretty certain that his name was spelled with 2 A's. How he came to that conclusion when his name is nothing like that is still a bit of a mystery. 1947. A British South American Airways aircraft named Stardust disappeared. Its last message was simply, "Stendeck. Severe turbulence encountered, now descending." After an exhausting search, no trace of the aircraft was found. For years, conspiracy theories and talk of alien abduction by wackos circulated. Until 1998, when mountain climbers on a remote mountain found an engine, pieces of metal, and clothing at the bottom of a glacier on the side of Mount Tupungato. Turns out the aircraft got caught flying the wrong way in the jet stream while it was flying at night and used a system of timing when to start their descent. Being in the jet stream reduced their airspeed in relation to the Earth, and they smacked themselves into the side of a mountain, after which an avalanche covered the wreckage. The wreckage took decades to flow down the sides of the mountain with the glaciers. The glacier preserved the wreck so well that 50 years later, the recovery team found identifiable remains, personal items, and could read serial numbers on the engines. Amazingly, one of the landing gear tires was still inflated, and teams continued to visit the site periodically as more of the aircraft, cargo, and remains of passengers are still emerging from the ice. While it doesn't give us who the Zodiac Killer is, just recently his most famous 340 cipher was solved after 51 years. According to Oranshak and the team, the message reads, "I hope you're having lots of fun in trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I'm not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner, because I now have enough slaves to work for me where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise. So they're afraid of death. I'm not afraid, because I know that my new life is life, will be an easy one in paradise, death." Dan Rather was attacked and beaten on a New York street by 2 men who kept demanding, "What's the frequency, Kenneth?" He was rescued by a doorman, and the 2 guys got away. For years, no one knew who they were. Then a man invaded NBC studios and killed a stagehand. When captured, he explained that the networks were beaming radio messages into his head. He wanted to know the frequency they were using so he could jam the signals. Dan Rather was shown a mugshot and positively identified his attacker. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Another science mystery. Back in the 1800s, evolution theorists had predicted the age of the Earth to be several milliard years, since this would have been necessary for the current life forms to have evolved. But Kelvin, the #1 superstar of physics at the time, had used thermodynamics to calculate the age of the Earth based on the temperature of its insides. and he said it was quite a bit younger. This was a mystery for many years and was considered one of the major flaws of then-current evolution theory. It was not until the early 1900s they found the answer. Radioactivity. Decays of uranium and other radioactive elements are heating up the Earth, so the cooling takes longer than expected. The biologists were right all along, but when the scientists who made the discovery were about to present their findings, who's sitting at the back of the lecture room? It's Kelvin! Now an old man, he's still alive and has come to watch their presentation. They were terrified at the idea of having to stand in front of the Lord of Physics himself and basically explain why he was wrong, but to their great relief, he immediately fell asleep. I think about this when I myself fall asleep in physics class. It happens to the best of us. What Dinoceras looks like. When I was a kid in the 80s, all that was known were the bones of the arms with enormous claws. Hence, its name, Terrible Hand. They were mostly shown grasping a small car because they were so freaking huge. The rest of the animal was a complete mystery. Was it like a giant Allosaurus? One that'd make the T-Rex look like a puppy in comparison? A few years later, it seemed more likely to be ostrich-like and omnivore. Either way, given how rare it is for fossils to form at all, I was convinced I'd die never knowing what this dinosaur actually looked like. Then, surprisingly, in 2014, they found more bones and it was just the weirdest thing. This one is strange. A guy is out drinking with friends late at night and leaves. He starts wandering the streets and a CCTV sees him enter a cul-de-sac. Then he's never seen again. Some think there's foul play, since an accidental death would at least result in a body. But then family and friends reveal that he had a very strange habit of falling asleep in garbage bins when he was drunk. A few hours after he entered the cul-de-sac, the garbage truck came and picked up the bins. Later, after looking at the logs, it turns out that one bin weighed several £100 more than it should have. But that was only recognized after it was too late. Damn. So the guy probably suffocated on trash while drunk or got crushed. Britt here. I seem to remember the police realizing quite early that he was most likely in the dumpster. They searched the landfill for months and unfortunately were not able to recover his body. What a way to go. I mean, is that a Darwin Award? I think for that to qualify, you have to go apply an exotic but ill-advised method to solve a different problem. And what this guy did was just a strange drunken habit. Sad, although you have to wonder how often he was getting plastered for this to be a trademark thing that he did. Mark Felt was DT, the key source for the journalist that pursued the Watergate story. Met him once in the 80s. He was a connection through a business associate of my father's. When it came out that Mr. Felt was DT, my dad called me to remind me of the dinner that we'd had when I was a kid. I don't remember much other than the intimidating vibe. The type of guy who, even as an 8-year-old, I didn't need to be told to mind my manners around. I just did that because he was scary, and his wife wore a hat with a fake bird in it. So in the early 2000s, someone posted new wave music that had been initially recorded off a German radio station on cassette around 1985. It contained about a minute of a song that became known as Stay, the second time around, that no one seemed to be able to find any more information about. This became a pretty famous earworm internet mystery until 2013 when folks on Reddit discovered the actual song and artist. It turned out it was a song by the Swedish artist Johan Lindell titled Up on the Roof, that never became any kind of hit up until that time, and had never been re-released after the original analog release. El Dorado, or the Lost City of Gold, turned out to be a mistranslation. It was just the name of some guy that got mistranslated to the name of a city. Sounds like exactly what someone who's on the trail would say. The trail that we blaze! They heard stories of a Muisca ritual where their leader would be covered in gold dust and then jump into a lake to sacrifice the gold to the gods. The Spanish called him Golden Man, El Dorado. Eventually, they believed the name referred to a city, not a person. The murders of Jay Cook and Tanya von Keulenborg. A couple from Victoria, BC went on a short trip to Washington State in 1987 and were murdered. It remained unsolved until 2018 when a genetic match on the DNA found on Tanya was found. The story was of interest to me as I live in Victoria and remembered the story on the news when the murder happened when I was a young kid. Between 2010 and 2015, I actually worked with her younger brother. He grew up and became a lawyer. Very nice guy, and I was so happy for him when they announced it was solved. The Andreen MacDonald case. She and her husband Andre, yes, Andreen and Andre, originally were from Jamaica. They moved up to my town in Texas where Andre was Air Force and Andreen was a bodybuilding business owner. Andre was pretty jealous that Andreen was more successful and was constantly begging and demanding that she make him co-owner of her company. She always said no. One day he'd had it and did away with her. The gym that she frequented every single morning got concerned when she stopped showing up. She was very close with the ladies she worked out with and even gave them a key to her house. She told them that if she ever went missing, that her husband probably did it, and they knew he had an attitude. So one day, while Andre was out, the ladies went to check on Andrine. Her car was there, her wallet was there, but she wasn't. They found blood and hair in her bathroom. That's when the cops were called. Cops showed up when Andre was home and asked about Andrine. He said she was in the hospital. They asked him, if she's in hospital, how come her wallet's here? He responded simply, talk to my lawyer. They got a warrant and were able to search the house further, saw more leftover evidence in the bathroom and evidence of clothes had been found burned in the fire pit in the backyard. But no body. So all they could do was charge him with a missing persons deal. Andre was super snarky about it too. How he'd be proven innocent, how the cops would never catch on. Little did he realize how loved Andrine was, and how much Texas ranchers hate corrupt and snarky murderers. Crowds gathered daily and were given permission to sweep over the rancher's land for any sign of Andrine's body. Just as the crowds started feeling defeated and Andre started to see hope of being released, a rancher was scoping his field. He had heard coyotes out and went to see what could have enticed them. Surely enough, he found human bones, later identified as Andrine. So yeah, proper charges were able to be filed. So some ask why she stayed or why he felt jealous that she was more successful. Remember, they're from Jamaica. The whole point of coming here was to better themselves and bring pride to their families. So she was doing great, but because she was doing so good, his family was kind of looking down on him because his wife was better and more successful than him. Then she stayed with him, mainly because she wanted to try and make sure their daughter's life could be as normal as possible. Sucks that it kind of backfired for her, but now she's being taken care of by her aunt and grandma, who both love and support her. What a grim story. Not that I ever intend to murder anyone, but doing it and then staying put and complacent in a community full of people who suspect you doesn't seem like the smartest move. In the 1970s, a number of Japanese citizens disappeared from coastal areas in Japan. After many years, it was found out that North Korea had abducted them. Most of the missing were in their 20s. The youngest, Megumu Yukata, was 13 when she disappeared in November 1977 from the Japanese west coast city of Niigata. In case anyone else is interested, also go look up the time that Kim Jong-il kidnapped a South Korean director and his actress wife, as well as the special effects team behind Godzilla in order to make his own monster movie, Pulgasari. Where is the Titanic? Most people don't realize that half of the people in the world grew up when the ship's location was still a complete mystery. Now, it's old news. Memories of Murder, a movie based on a true story about South Korea's first serial murderer. A confession was made in 2019 after more than 30 years. He was already in jail for doing the unspeakable act and killing his sister-in-law. Go check the movie, it's a masterpiece. What's the purpose of the appendix, really? Apparently we now know it keeps your good bacteria safe. Well, my appendix tried to kill me. 100 years ago, Viking bones from one of the most important grave finds in Denmark disappeared from the Museum of National History. They were found last week in a box, seemingly misplaced among elements from a different find. Gidus and the Land of Tar. A few years ago, 2017, comedian Nate Fernald posted a tweet of an enamel pin he had bought of a familiar-looking friendly monster with the word Gidus written underneath it. He was unable to find any information on what Gidus is, and the mystery took the internet by storm. The mystery kept growing as someone found a sticker of Gidus alongside other characters, all listed as the Land of Tar. The sticker sheet was from a company called Denison. There were no Google results at all for either Gidus or the Land of Tar. With multiple people researching, that was where the mystery was left off, and people kind of forgot about it. But a couple of years later, it was solved. A podcast was made where they investigated the mystery, got a hold of the former art director of Denison back in the 80s, who referred them to a few potential artists, and they found the daughter of one of the artists who had passed away, and in her father's stuff was the original pencil drawings of the creatures of the Land of Tar. It was never anything but those stickers. This internet mystery still appeared on lists for a while as unsolved. The only mystery left is who made the enamel pins, which is still a mystery but not as big as who is this character in this land that seems familiar but there's no record of. I have one that most people seem to not know about. Grand Duchess Anastasia was in fact killed with the rest of her family in 1918. She never escaped, and the several women throughout the 20th century claiming to be her lied. The site of the execution of the Tsar and his family was completely untouched until 1991. Excavation found only 9 of the 11 expected remains. It wasn't until 2007 that 2 further sets of remains were found a small distance away from the previous grave sites. DNA testing found that one of the sets of the remains belonged to Tsarevich Alexei, and the other to one of his sisters. With this find, it proved conclusively that the entire imperial family was in fact executed and buried in 1918. What's the last horrifying discovery you made while snooping around? Yesterday, my roommate ditched out of state right before rent is due, so naturally I'm curious how he left his room and whatnot. Got more than I bargained for, room is a disaster, beer bottles and food all over, but the thing that got me most was his adult toy for his butt and huge pile of used tissues. If I ever see him again, I might just go to prison for what I do. I was around 7 or 8, snooping in on my mum and dad's closet. I found a file with some papers, including my birth certificate. It had my sister's name as my mum, and for dad it said unknown. So that was my first indication I was being raised by my grandparents. Yeah, that was a crappy day. What did that do to your relationship with your sister mom? It really messed it up in my opinion. I was too young for this kind of revelation and didn't have the maturity or knowledge to properly process it. I was 8 years old and felt like everyone who mattered to me had lied to me. I felt like it was a mean joke that everyone was in on but me. As my brother, uncle, told me years later, I became a very angry child after that and acted out quite a lot. I'm still in contact with my bio mum, but we really don't have much of a relationship. But that's all good. My mum lost her phone, so while at their house, I fished out my dad's old iPhone 4 and charged it up so she could activate it and use it while waiting for her replacement. The phone was a few years old, so I decided to look through the pictures for fun and because I'm a fricking snoop. I stumbled upon a very undressed photo of my dad, a fricking mirror selfie, Jesus fricking Christ, Dad, and immediately threw the phone to my mum in disgust. My mum's face turned white and said, "This picture definitely wasn't for me." And that's how I accidentally exposed my dad's affair. I wasn't snooping, but I used my wife's laptop one day because my computer was dead. I found out she had a secret email account and was active on lesbian dating sites. I'm male, by the way. I'm a girl. My boyfriend at the time left his email open and I saw that he was responding to ads on Craigslist and Backpages.com to meet up with, I don't even know what the terminology is anymore, I guess trans women? I always felt like he flirted with the idea of being with a guy but was super outwardly homophobic. We broke up eventually, for kind of unrelated reasons, and I saw that he's been recently in vacation in Thailand. I know what he's up to. Rubbers in Dad's backpack. He only uses that backpack when he's on business trips. Oh dear. Well, you never know. Was your dad an army man? Would he have needed a way to store water if he lost his canteen? I'm clasping at straws here. I found a really detailed journal my mum kept while she was fighting cancer about 3 years after she died. She wrote in it describing how the cancer was getting worse and the treatments getting harder to cope with. It was pretty hard to read, but it made me kind of glad that her nightmare was over. Death doesn't always have to be as sad as people make it out to be. For a lot of people, it's a release. One day I came home from work early and my husband had gone out and left some very questionable torrents downloading, which led me down a rabbit hole of deceit and craziness that I never would have thought he was capable of. I found a friend's Reddit profile. I found out how lonely and depressed he feels all the time despite appearing to be one of the happiest and most outgoing people I know. I definitely make sure I include him in any plans we do if I can. I never told him that I found it. I met a woman, I'm a woman too by the way, and I knew she was on her second marriage. She never talked about her first husband, and I assumed she'd had a bad divorce and never brought it up. I eventually Googled her name and found out her first husband died of cancer. We've been good friends for a year now, and we've still never discussed it. Was on a road trip with my parents. Looked over my mom's shoulder to see who she was texting. It was the guy she was cheating on my dad with. I confronted her a few days later. She denied it, of course. Then I read word for word what they were texting and she couldn't deny it anymore. She told me she'd tell him. That was a year and a half ago. She still hasn't. I don't really know what to do with what I know. I know I should tell my dad, but I really don't want to be the one to tell him. Next time I see my mom, I don't see her much anymore because of this. I think I need to threaten her and tell her that she needs to tell him or I will. It's a really crappy situation to be in. Similar story, my now ex-husband had been acting odd and on his phone a lot. If one of our kids were near him, he'd position the phone so they couldn't see. Even put a password on the phone. Before this, he'd always let the kids use his phone for games. My middle son, he was 10 at the time, 16 now, thought he'd be funny and guessed the password based on what he could glance at while walking by. He guessed the password and brings me the phone and is visibly upset. I look down at the phone and there's an email my husband has sent to another woman, telling her how he missed her and loved her, etc. I only read the first few lines before I confronted him. He just laughed. My son sat on the front porch that night with me. He wouldn't leave my side. He's still a sweetheart at 16 and very protective of his mum. When my father died, I was going through his computer looking for information regarding accounts, etc. I looked at his internet history to see what might have been important in his life leading up to his death. Apparently, he didn't know about incognito mode when surfing his adult content. About 11 or 12, staying at my uncle and aunt's. They went out for the day and I stayed back as I was feeling ill. Looked in their closet and found a suspicious video. Popped it in, lady in greenhouse spreading herself. Nice. I started cranking it. Realized it was my aunt. When I was snooping through my parents' closet in middle school while they were out, and I found a toolbox full of adult toys and penthouse forums. So, yeah. Found a bunch of letters written to and from my parents about my dad's infidelity. I think they wanted to really think about what's on the page. It's caused me significant emotional distress because I'm not supposed to know and I can't tell my sister or talk to them about it. People who are technically my equals at work get paid more than me, but yet they introduce me as, "Oh, this is John, he's our main guy. Ask for a raise, and if not, start looking around." I'm already doing both. A couple of years ago at my old job, the time came for our quarterly raises. Mine was pretty crappy, and I wasn't too happy about it. I went to grab the printout of my new pay rate and saw one of the new employees' printouts underneath it. His raise, while still minuscule, was almost twice as much as mine was, and his hourly rate was higher too. I was teed off. He'd only been there a couple of months and he had less knowledge of the products we sold. We were salespeople at a major wireless carrier, and he was late and absent all the time. But since he had an outgoing personality and enjoyed bullcrapping with the customers, I guess he was more valuable to the company. I quit shortly after that. I was about 7 or 8 years old, snooping around my parents' room and found an original copy of The Joys of Sex, an entire book of ugly, hairy people climbing on top of each other. The deed became a scary, nauseating thought after that experience. Oh god, I found that at our cabin when I was like 14. It was fascinating in a can't look away from a train wreck kind of way. I remember marveling that the drawings were so well informed and anatomically sound, but so lifeless. I know, right? Nobody looked overly pleased to be there, and they were drawings. How hard is it to draw a smile while being pierced from behind by a large hairy man? I imagine it would be hard to draw anything while being pierced from behind by a large hairy man, regardless of whether or not you were enjoying it. Well, thank you to everyone who contributed to that little exchange. I kind of have a morbid fascination with seeing whatever gruesome deeds are depicted in that book now, but I'd better not for my sanity. Found out my ex was cheating on me. Ironically, I only snooped because I wanted to put my mind at ease. I know nothing is going on, but I can't shake this feeling of impending doom, so I'll just check and reassure myself. Haha, I was naive. Was reformatting a guy's laptop in the barracks back in my army days. The guy was really stupid. We were in IT training for one thing, and he should have been more than able to do it himself, but that's besides the point. So my buddy and I go to his room and mostly plan to reformat his laptop and screw with it. The whole turning the picture upside down, screen capping the desktop and rotating it, stuff like that. But just before we wiped the laptop, we found loads of illegal, disgusting material, like terabytes of it. When we called him over and asked him what the frick it was, he was proud of it. He said, "Nah dude, it's cool. Look, she loves it." It was at this point when I had to restrain my buddy from literally throwing this guy out the third-floor window, while 2 others helped this guy to the sergeant's desk. He had some difficulty with the stairs. The last I heard, he was dragged off for a court-martial, but I guarantee he's rotting in prison somewhere. This was just before I got out of the army, so my information is very limited. Still super effed up though, it was like he wanted us to see it. I found my great-grandfather's diabetic pee in a small glass vial. Didn't know what it was until I spilled it, then came the rancid smell and my mum telling me as it is. Next was a snake in an alcohol bottle filled to the brim. Seeing that when I was 8 years old was eerie, but ultimately didn't end there. Haha. When I was younger, my grandma got a kidney stone removed and asked the nurse to keep it in a bottle to give to my brother. That's when I realized I wasn't the favorite grandkid. My partner left her phone in my car and I got a feeling like I should check it. I'd had 100 opportunities to check her phone but never felt the urge. I always figured there was something about her behavior that triggered some kind of subconscious suspicion that caused me to check it. It's not like I went through all her text messages or anything either, just the last few texts and the most recently updated conversations. That's exactly what I did. It was a coworker of his, and the way he talked about her made me uncomfortable. Also, whenever she hung out with us, she made no effort to interact with me at all, and I always kind of felt like a third wheel with my own boyfriend. If she was already there when I came over, she'd sort of fall silent, and they both looked slightly guilty. I asked him about it a couple of times, very calmly mind you, and he always got defensive and started moping because I didn't trust him. Turns out he was a pretty good liar, haha, but very dumb to leave me bored in a waiting room with nothing but his phone to entertain myself. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I found out that my mum, who had forcefully taken me off my antidepressants and antipsychotics twice because medication isn't needed for those kinds of things, has been on antidepressants for about 14 years. Hypocrite. I found my sister's double-ended adult toy. I showed it to other kids whenever I could. Double-bladed, like Darth Maul. Reading my husband's, at the time we were roommates, Facebook messages when we were just roommates. Many of them were about the crazy girl he lived with and how much he hated her. Broke my heart, honestly, but it was my fault for looking. I was the crazy girl, medicated and happily married now. How did you stop being crazy? Did you hate him too? Through continued psychological care and medication. I liked him, and that was the major issue. After my mum died, my younger sister and I were going through drawers looking for her life insurance papers. We pulled out a paper in her nightstand and found the old envelope. Pulled it out, it had Polaroid undressed pictures of my mother from the time my dad was in Vietnam. My sister and I looked at each other, put them back in the envelope and put them in my dad's nightstand. When he dies, we'll shred them. I checked my dad's computer history when I was in high school. Accidental snooping. I was trying to find a site I'd been on recently. Tons of gay adult material came up. Life has never been the same since that day. That was either a secret that your mother was already aware of, or a ticking time bomb whose explosion gains more potential energy every passing day. Was looking for my birth certificate in my mum's safe. I began snooping around the safe a little more, out of curiosity, when I found an envelope with my name written on it in my mum's handwriting. Even more curious, I opened the envelope and pulled out a piece of paper with more of her handwriting on it. It explained why she put me up for adoption. I was pretty shaken up by it. She nearly gave me up. Sad part? She's a crap human being, and I sometimes wish she had. Years ago, I was digging through my mum's sock drawer looking for a pair of low-cut socks to borrow, since mine were all dirty and I didn't have time to do laundry. I felt something rubbery and was confused until I saw what it was. I'd accidentally grabbed my mum's marital aid. When I discovered my maternal grandmother had 4 different kids with 4 different men before settling down with my grandfather. My grandfather took them all in and later had 4 kids of his own with my grandmother. He loved them all the same and died protecting them. Some guy wanted to kill my oldest uncles for supposedly stealing his canoe. My grandfather found out and met the guy halfway to the river, and he got shot trying to block his way. This happened in Mexico where the law was non-existent, and the guy was never imprisoned. A few guys later, that guy died after killing a cop. The cop's family found him and got their revenge. My grandfather was a great and interesting man. He was a vegan, but at the same time he would hunt and fish so that his kids could have food on the table. He grew his own vegetables and washed his own socks. I wish I could have met him. I went to my parents' room to get something. On the way out, I stepped on a used rubber. I was barefoot. A book full of positions to do the deed in my dad's bedroom. It had a plastic cover, a thing my father did to all his favorite books when he was in uni. I'm not a particularly nosy person, so I haven't really found anything too terrible ever. But my mum is the worst about invasion of privacy. I came home from campus one day to find out that my old mattress had been replaced with a new mattress, signaling to me that my mother had been by my house while I was gone without telling me. Having swapped my old mattress out meant she had to have noticed the huge nylon straps that ran under the mattress to each corner for tying a person down. Also, the 60+ feet of rope that had been on my floor was not there anymore. I began looking around and found the straps and the rope, both in my bedside drawer where the cuffs for the straps were already stored. My mum knew it was bedside table rope. Oh, this is a good one. I had a witch I worked with who didn't like me, and I somehow found out my boss's password for his email. I was snooping because, hey, you asked, and I saw an email from her where they were talking about me, and she made a comment about me being on Reddit all the time. Oh man, I used to sit next to my boss and looked at his screen once, and the girl that didn't like me complained that I was always on Skype. Skype was literally a program we used for work. She complained to him over Skype. I literally quit that job and got a better one because I couldn't handle her middle school level bullying anymore. It worked out and I'm at the best job of my life. Looked up my ex-girlfriend's real name. She gave me a fake name for the whole of the relationship and I was so smitten to believe her friends vouching, and finding out that she's popular in her hometown in the news articles. Her father works for Lockheed Martin and that she was actually dating someone else the entire time I was dating her. That fake name crap worked, I guess. But God, it hurts to this day and that was over 3 years ago. I'd think I'd be getting better, right? Nah, fam, still heartbroken. I went snooping for Christmas presents as a kid and found a Jurassic Park T-Rex toy. Christmas morning came and the toy read, "From Santa." That's when I knew. I was fixing up my boyfriend's phone because he'd just returned the loaner and needed all of his stuff restored after a repair. I had a couple of drinks in me at the time or I probably wouldn't have snooped, but he'd been acting pretty distant the last couple of months. So I checked out some text messages between him and his friend. Honestly, I was hoping to find something sweet or reassuring, but instead I found out he was trying to find a nice way to dump me without hurting my feelings. And rather than sit on that info, I confessed that I snooped and confronted him about it. That was a sad day. We still care about each other and will remain friends as we were before we started dating. But I really, really loved that man. I just loved him more than he loved me, I guess. My mum's marital aid. Hey, your mom needs loving too, man. When I'm not there, at least. Cue the gif of the kids jumping at that sick burn. But seriously, I'm guessing it's not a surprise to any of us that half of these seem to be children discovering their parents' involvement in the birds and the bees. I found my dad's extensive magazine collection. As a kid, I was amazed. I found the, I think, October 1996 Playboy in my dad's bedside dresser when I was 12, and that was a turning point in my life. I went back when no one was home and became a man. Once I'd seen every photo in that magazine, I snooped around a bit more and found like a dozen more Penthouse and Playboy magazines on the top shelf of his closet. Goldmine. I was 5 and at my friend's birthday party. All our parents were there. My friend told us, there were 6 kids altogether, that his parents had a secret and he wanted to show us something. So we all crowded into his parents' bedroom, locked the door, and he told us that if we searched the room for the key, which opens a black suitcase, we'd find the secret. So we turned that room inside out and finally found the key in an old shoe. He opened up a black suitcase and there were tons of tapes, magazines, and giant adult toys wrapped in plastic bags. We didn't know what they were, so we thought they were pool floaties. Thinking back, we were whacking each other with them and doing all kinds of regrettable things because we didn't know what they were. Anyway, my friend told us that the real secrets were the tapes, so we popped them on in his dad's TV, in the bedroom, and started watching them. That was the first time I ever saw a real male member in real life. Unfortunately, it was also attached to a clown with a painted face, and the clown was doing the deed with all the women in the room who also had their faces painted to look like clowns. It was super traumatizing. I never got over it. Where the frick were your parents when all this was going on? This sounds like a bad episode of the Rugrats. Oh man, I was at a friend's house and he left me for an hour or so to pick up some other friends from a train station about an hour away. I figured I'd be cool and surprise everyone with some green herb when they got in. I was rolling on his dad's PC desk when my roach kind of slips under the keyboard. So when I lift the keyboard, there's a bit of paper stuck to the bottom with the password written on it. He has a smoking hot mum, so I decided to snoop on them. Instantly regrettable. A search for pictures yielded about 100 pics of his dad in women's clothing, stashed in a hidden folder called Medical Records. I shut down the PC and never spoke about it to anyone. I've not seen my friend in a few years, but I hope for the sake of his family it's still all hidden. His dad is some big-time financial director for a well-known supermarket chain. I don't really know how it would affect his career if everything got out. Fixing my grandmother's laptop and I found what I thought would be the answer. Restarted the laptop, but I needed to find the page again, so without thinking, I opened the history. These days I'm pretty hard to shake, but nobody is ready to suddenly discover their grandma's taste and special adult interests. Actually never regretted any of my finds while snooping, and I have found some crap. However, the one that was the biggest shock was when I found out Grandma was a smoker. Grandpa is heavily against smoking, by the way. A human skull in my neighbor's woods. I was snooping through my partner's emails for updates on a sad family situation that he has trouble talking to me about sometimes, and an email came in from his bank alerting him to suspicious activity. I opened it and saw the suspicious charge was for $2,500 at a jewelry store. Yep, ruined the surprise of his proposal. He still doesn't know 3 years on.
What's a glitch in the matrix you've used to coast through life? I got moved to a team on the 2nd floor. My desk was on the 4th floor. I stopped coming to work. The 4th floor team thought I moved downstairs. The 2nd floor team thought I was still upstairs. I just worked from home instead, for over a year. A while ago, I read about a forgotten employee who coasted by on a job he didn't understand. It was supposedly a true story. The author explains how they'd worked in a company for years, and at some point they were moved to a new position within the same company. When he moved to the new position, no one really told him what the position actually was and what he was meant to be doing. After a week and then a month, he still didn't know, and it was too late to ask. So he was just filling time by coming into work and messing around all day. It had a bit about him getting a call from another company employee in a different city with the same job title. The author tried to pretend he knew what his job was before realizing the other guy was doing the exact same thing as him, and only called to try and find out from the author what the job might be. Whether it was true or not, it was a funny read. The article was called Forgotten Employee. Here's the quote. "The next day, I showed up at work with a new purpose in life. What I'd come across was even better than having no job. I now have a job with no responsibilities." So, there's a local convenience store called Sheets. A new store opened and they gave out sheets of 5 free coffee coupons. After a while, they just had them sitting out in a pile for you to grab. I asked one day if I could grab 2, and she said, "You can take the whole stack for all I care, we have a ton of those." So I did. I procured myself 500 free coffees. Sheets also has a rewards program. Every 10 coffees you buy, you get a free one. Every time I use a coupon, it still adds a coffee to my 10 count. I currently have 30 free coffees on my card and still a small stack of free coupons. Sheets is the best. One day the whole world will know that name. Not if that's their business strategy. A certain popular pizza chain in the UK once royally effed up my order, and head office sent me a voucher for a free pizza. Any size. I've had it for nearly a year now, and the delivery guy has never asked for the voucher, so I've had a lot of free pizza. So you just kind of say, "I have a voucher for pizza" over the phone, and they trust you? Usually the guy on the phone doesn't have a clue. He puts me on hold and then the manager asks a few questions, and every time they explain that I need to give the voucher to the pizza delivery guy. I never give the voucher, I'm never asked for the voucher, I've never been contacted about the voucher. I've used it on 2 to 3 stores, but I space it out because I'm scared they'll remember me. This is the sweetest deal, but these people eventually get found out most of the time, as the person in the next story can attest. Until last year, I'd been using an unrestricted free Big Mac coupon that I found on the internet. Not sure if someone edited it to remove the date or if they merely left it as an oversight, but I'd get a Big Mac every week and claim that I'd won a book with 52 of them. Eventually, a manager called my bluff and sent the coupon to someone higher up. Came back next week and saw it framed with a caption, "Longest running scam." I turned around and walked out. Once, cardamom pods were for sale at a local grocery, but instead of being $14.95 per ounce, the computer messed it up and they were $1.49 an ounce. I bought a lot of cardamom, and I made a lot of sweet buns. Thug life. There was a snack machine next to a soda machine. When you bought a snack, the soda machine would spit out a Mountain Dew. Another job had a soda machine where if you hit the button repeatedly after putting in your money, you'd get multiple sodas. A certain grocery store chain will offer you twice your money back if they sell you expired goods. While shopping, I specifically look for expired items, buy them and then return them to the customer service for double my money. Sometimes they give me cash, other times they give me gift cards to the store. I'm fine with either. I bet the company wouldn't even mind if they found out you were doing it intentionally. They've essentially hired you to clean the store of expired goods, and probably, from their perspective, not paying you a ton of money to do it. Yeah, my employer HEB just ended their out-of-date guarantee in May. It was if you found an expired item, you'd get the same item for free. We had a lot of people that took advantage of it, but even so, my manager explained to me that if they're able to find that much expired product on our shelves, that means things aren't being rotated correctly, and therefore someone we pay isn't doing their job correctly. So why not give the customer some sort of compensation for doing a job we should be doing, keeping expired product off the shelves? I downloaded LimeWire Pro off LimeWire. Holy crap, people still use LimeWire? I was using that back in the 5th grade, early 2000s, I think.
A global hotel chain ran a promotion a few years ago where they sent a link to book a night's free stay. There was nothing to stop you from using the link repeatedly. I was stuck at Union Station in DC during Hurricane Sandy, and I used that glitch to house a lot of fellow stranded travelers. They either figured it out or the promo ended, but it went on for 9 months. Years ago, I was a cashier at a grocery store, and there was a glitch where the really expensive fancy ice cream that cost about $8 scanned as $2. All the cashiers knew about it, and we'd regularly buy a ton of the stuff. Very few customers bought that kind of ice cream, and if they noticed it scanning cheaper, we'd just wink at them. It went on for months until anyone noticed. I found out that the Target near me was only charging $8 for silverware that I think was supposed to be $28. I bought 2 sets of them, then went to another Target for a third, but that one charged me full price. I returned to the first Target, then went back the next day and got it for $8. Now I have so much silverware I can't even fit it all in the dishwasher. If you push the Diet Orange Fanta button on the drink machine on the second floor of my dorm building, it instead gives you 2 bottles of water and sometimes lemonade. I decided to buy a chocolate orange at a local supermarket, took it to the self-checkout, and it scanned with the value of 1 pence. So I got my friends to run back and clear the shelves of chocolate oranges and bring them back to the till. Got 30 chocolate oranges for 30 pence. I used to work for a web host. We had a referral program that tracked your customers by cookie. I had set up a referral site for myself and showed a coworker without thinking about it. From then on, whenever a customer would sign up over the phone with him, it earned me about $50. There was a gumball machine at the grocery store that would spit out 4+ pieces of candy if you turned the crank really slowly. Yeah, some old ones had a very simple scoop and dump mechanism, and they just locked after a revolution, so if you held it just right, there would be a hole there and you could shake a ton of candy out. Public transit in my area sells day passes for $9. I've used the same day pass for 2 years. When I was basically homeless back in high school, I'd get day passes from a shelter to go to school. I was often able to use the same one without getting the months or days punched out for multiple days, depending on how much of a crap a given bus driver gave. Not too long after I figured that out, I could punch the holes in the date areas halfway and fold the paper back just a little so it looked properly punched and therefore valid. Every day I would fold the used day back and tape the backside. Thus I could use a ticket for a whole week or 2. I'd use the extras I got to give to trolley cops who would scrutinize tickets and passes and otherwise reuse the same ticket over and over. I've been gaming the free stuff for your birthday racket for several years. Most of the restaurants and businesses don't check for your actual birth date, so I use different months with different businesses so the discounts and meals are spread through the year. To be fair, as long as he's only claiming a single birthday with each business, it doesn't matter that he's giving different businesses different dates. No one's ever called me out on it, but as long as I'm not trying to get more than 1 birthday deal a year, why would they care? I rarely celebrate my birthday on the actual day anyway. It's December 27th, and if it's a weekday, I have work. This is a man who has decided that if Christmas is going to steal the thunder of his birthday, he's going to steal more birthday thunder from all his local restaurants and businesses. I don't approve, but it has a fun, petty supervillain quality to it. You know how I keep exploiting my glitches in the Matrix? I never tell anyone what I'm doing. Worked at a popular pizza chain some years ago. Automated phone system had a glitch that told customers we were closed an hour before we actually did close. Never corrected it because I can do tasks to close the store on time. One vending machine at my school would give you $4.50 in change when purchasing a $2.50 bottle of pop with a $5 note. A $10 or $20 note would give correct change. 50 cents for a bottle of pop. Yes, please. I once bought a $1.50 bag of chips from a vending machine. I paid with a toonie, which is a Canadian $2 coin. It gave me back 10 quarters, $2.50 in change. So I made $1 off a bag of chips. Even the vending machines are nice in Canada. I have a lot of traffic lights on the first mile or 2 of my drive to work, so I leave at 6:55 and I get to work 15 minutes early because I catch blinking yellows. I used to leave at 7 and get there just on time, and any extra traffic made me late. When I was 13 or 14, I had a sweet tooth and no money for sating it. Luckily, all the kids at the private school I went to did have money, so my best friend and I devised a plan to separate them from that money. Every morning before school, we'd go into the local co-op, buy various snacks, chocolate bars, flapjacks, crisps, etc., and take them to school in our bags. Then we'd run a small black market out of our lockers during breaks. There were no vending machines in the school and very few snacks available from the refectory. so we were completely in control of the market and made a lot of money. One year, this went into overdrive for Easter, making us over 400% our usual profit due to a pricing error at the coop. 6 Cadbury cream eggs were being sold for £3.99, giving us a $2 profit when we sold them for £1 each to our eager peers. But 12 cream eggs were only £3.69, giving us over £8 profit per pack. With cream eggs being a seasonal item, they were immensely popular at school. After a month or so, regrettably, someone picked up on the error and corrected it in their system. When we walked up to the till with 4 12-packs each, we discovered they were now priced at £6.99. So I assume they should have been all along. Luckily, when our faces fell and we explained they were only £3.69 on the shelves, the cashier rang them up at their shelf price. The next day, they were back to their usual price, though, on the shelves and system, so we went back to our old ways of scamming slightly less money out of our peers.
You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe.
When I was a kid, the soda machine at the pool didn't recognize when you'd hit the coin return. You could just cycle the same dime through the machine enough times and then make your selection. You'd even get your dime back at the end. When I was 7 on Halloween, I dressed up as Batman, then hit all the houses in my neighborhood. It was only 8, so then I dressed up as Spider-Man and got all of the houses again. Double the candy, mother effers. I miss all the candy, so I'm thinking of trick-or-treating this year as an adult. Not really a glitch, but I found out I could fit my arm into the vending machine at college and pretty much cleared out the bottom shelf. Fish and chips shop near my house. Gumball machine inside. Put money in and turn for 9 clicks. Hold dial in position. Flick a few times just underneath the dial. Turn for 1 more click and hold in position. Gumballs will continue to be released for as long as you hold it there. $1, unlimited gumballs. How could you possibly learn that? He started with 1 click. I had a Pepsi machine at college that ate people's change returns. I figured out how to get it unstuck and usually ended up with a soda and $4 every time I went to it. My Sprint phone gave me a Wi-Fi hotspot without me paying for it for about a year. I updated the firmware and lost the functionality, so I called Sprint to ask what was wrong. I was supposed to be paying for the Wi-Fi ability, $30 a month, and the lady asked if I'd been using it for the past year. I hung up, saved myself $360 without even knowing. My old job had a pretty high turnover in terms of managers, so none of them really had time to learn the intricacies of our building, nor the abundance of legacy and experimental job titles that people had been assigned. As the lone stockroom attendant, I used my knowledge of the basements and the fact that no one, including me, knew what the heck I was supposed to be doing, to go and have naps or generally hide and do nothing for most of the day. Purchased a 3-day trial for a website. Cancelled it on the 3rd day. Access to the site remained active for the next 7 years. All I get from my internet provider is internet, but they do provide cable TV. So I thought, what would happen if I plugged my internet cable into my TV? Well, now I get basic cable for free, like 50 to 70 channels. I never use it though. Children think Netflix is the way TV is supposed to be. F all of those commercials and not picking exactly what you want on TV. They just didn't put a filter on your line. The cable guy messed up either when disconnecting previous service or setting your new service up. Your internet traffic operates on a different frequency than the video traffic. The filter gets rid of the cable TV transmission, so it's easy to remove them too if you know what you're doing. All you need is a way to get into the box, the keys are available on eBay, and a coaxial barrel connector to replace the filter. You might want to take a wrench too because the connections can be hard to break if it's been on for a while. My college gave out 10 free rubbers if you show school ID, but they don't scan it or anything, so I sometimes on the weekends would come in every 20 minutes, getting more and more protection until I had a stockpile. Then at night I would go around to parties selling them for $1 each. I feel like every university I've been to provides hundreds of free contraceptives if you know where to go. Then again, it's also a very typical move to go to a party without one of the hundreds that you have stashed away in your room, so fair play. WinRAR. Or is it supposed to be free? Wait, there's a paid version? Sam's Club once gave out a coupon that gave $5 off any cheese. All of their cheese at that point came in sub-$5 increments, and they didn't take the coupon at the end, they only scanned it. That weekend was the first wine and cheese party I'd ever hosted. In high school, I would go to the attendance office and say I needed to go home. The attendance lady would give me the phone to call my dad so she could talk to him to verify. I would instead call my deep-voiced friend and he would excuse me. Then he would go in about 30 minutes later and call me. Worked over 20 times and we were never caught. Best part, it didn't count as a missed class because it was excused. Nice job. You got out of a free education. Back in the day, there was an awesome MUDD called Dragon's Gate on AOL that was something like $2 an hour to play. It had a great community and it was a ton of fun. This was in dial-up days, so if you purposefully slowed your connection down by downloading something and logging into the game, you could hit spacebar on a sign-in screen a crapload of times and it would open up 2 screens. Just close the first one and it signs you out while still being connected, and you can play through the second screen for free. The best part was all the hate from other people on the forums when the glitch finally got outed. My first job in high school. I'm a habitually early person, so I found out that the time clock system would let me clock in 5 minutes early. I later found out that I could then clock out 10 minutes early and I'd be paid for all 5 hours. Another guy, an older man, worked 8-hour shifts and would save his 2 15-minute breaks, union job, and half-hour lunch and do his shopping for the week in his last hour. Now, I'm a truck driver. I'm home every day, so I don't really need the half-hour break we have to take, so I take one that logs in my book as a half-hour. I think this is a glitch that the company might know about, as so many local people talk about it. Okay, the shop is Waitrose in the UK. Big chain supermarket. They do various deals where a product is £5, but if you buy 3, then you get all of them for £10. Now, the glitch works when they reduce the product as its expiry date is near. So, now the product is down to £1, regularly less. The thing is, if you still buy 3 at the reduced price, the offer still kicks in and it takes £5 off your bill. The last time I did this, I noticed that a bag of potatoes was reduced to 30 pence, but it was buy 3 for £5. I ended up buying £9 of potatoes and got the rest of my shopping for free. Wine, beer, pizza, all free. You just have to make sure your bill does have a positive balance in the end, even if it's only pennies. I go down near closing time 3/4 of the nights a week and get this deal. It doesn't always get you the extra free stuff, but you usually get the 3 products for free. The products can be fresh meats, vegetables, fruit, and the pre-made meals like spag bol and pizza. In Counter-Strike Source, you can get outside the map in DE Piranesi in Counter-Strike Spawn. I sometimes just glitch outside of it and kill people from spawn. It freaks a lot of people out. You monster. I'd paid for a relatively slow internet connection, but I used it to get about 10 times faster internet with unlimited data. It was fun for a while. I wrote a program in Python that pretty much does my job for me the first day I went there. I do nothing at work all day besides Reddit and fun side projects with code. I got a TI-85 calculator from a thrift store for $1. I'd do the same thing with math work at school. If I know the material well enough to write a program to do it on my calculator, I figured it was good enough. I did this in DOS Batch many years ago. I had one physical task which took about 3 minutes a day and everything else could be largely automated. Free glasses from Coastal.com. They have a free first pair deal, so you just keep making new Gmail addresses and use the coupon code. They don't check the shipping address, plus you can claim it's for family members or roommates. All you have to pay for is shipping. I have like 5 pairs. I have a 25% off code that I use for travel I book online fairly often. It was supposed to only be valid for a specific time period. That time period went over a year ago, and the code still works fine on the website. I get 25% off my travel every time. I think my free 6-month trial of Amazon Prime for students was supposed to end 5 years ago. I'm still a student, so I don't feel too bad about it. In early college, some friends and I were in the student union food court getting some frozen treats from a vending machine. We noticed the digital screen that usually says, insert bills face up or whatever said, test vend. Basically, you'd push a button and it'd just give you that selection without putting in any money. We got so many ice cream bars that we were giving them away to random students as we passed by. When I was in college, the sign-up system for classes was paper-based. You could get into any closed section by having your buddy drop that section, even if he wasn't taking it. Also, there was a men's room at the head of the line. Sometimes, right before the doors opened for registration, there would be about 50 people in that men's room. The train to my work and back costs £3.40 a day, and the machines have had trouble taking change in the past, so for about 5 months I've decided to not pay for a ticket. The fine for not having a ticket is £20. As long as I don't get caught for a weekend a day, I'm golden. That was until they decided to put more inspectors on the trains. Getting guac at Chipotle. My local team never passes it down the line, so I never get charged for it. Man, my local Chipotle practically assigns an armed guard to my burrito when I ask for guac. Then I visit my sister in San Diego and a restaurant serves what would have been $45 worth of guac at Chipotle prices. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.